Hello and welcome to the Monday show on Our Game. The favourite team tune, the team tune that everyone is humming every Monday morning, every Thursday morning. Delighted to be here. Once again, we're here every Monday at 12:30. Delighted to be sponsored by OurGameSupporters.com, the best retro jerseys in the business. This 94 one, if you want to bring back the memories of the 5-minute final, this is one of my favourite ones, I have to say. Shane has a lovely retro Cork jersey there, and obviously nearly like every jersey in the country, and some counties are covered 3 or 4 times over. The best in the business. Go to OurGameSupporters.com, use the promo code OurGame to get 15% off. Shane, I'm in the chair again today. You're a small bit hoarse. You were doing commentating on matches over the weekend. I don't know what else you were doing, but you sound like a different man this morning.
Yeah, fairly scratchy old throat. It was like my throat was dragged through a haggard cornfield. One of the boys turned on a couple of the Dublin quarterfinals that I was doing co-commentary on yesterday, and he said it took a few minutes to realise who it was. So I don't know, is my voice actually that cut up?
It's not too bad, but I was chatting to you for a few minutes beforehand, so I know that it's going to get progressively worse as the show goes on. I have an awful thing. I just can't, if I go out for a night out, I just can't help shouting and bawling and roaring, and every time I meet someone, I'm shouting or I'm doing an impression or something like that. And it could take me 3 or 4 days after a night out for it to come back. As viewers of the show will know, on a Monday morning after the odd night out that I will go on, I'd be definitely worse for wear. But I'm sure you'll ease yourself into it. I find sometimes when you're like that, you actually have to nearly break your voice to get into it, like a happy place where it doesn't hurt as much. We've loads of G8 to talk about this morning, so I'm sure we'll get there.
Yeah, I haven't been, like, now and again involuntarily I go up through the octaves, like I'm back in the church choir again. And I had to have a little remedy for myself when I was doing the co-commentary alongside Oisin Langan yesterday. In between like big plays or at halftime or whatever, I was pulling out a bit of honey and straight down the hatch. It had to be done, and it got me through it.
The good Manuka honey. Anytime my voice has ever gone, my mother put a load of that into a cup, a bit of hot water, and stirred it around and start drinking it. It's quite harsh. Like, I don't know, our generation isn't used to the honey. Our parents' generation absolutely love it, but our generation definitely isn't used to it. I like a bit of sweetness now, but that's even a bit too sweet for me.
Yeah, you're a real mammy's boy. I'd say it took a long time to wean you off, if you know what I
mean. we have a lot of cattle at home there, and calves, and you wean them off the mother, and you'd hear the mother bawling for a while. I'm sure I was probably like that when I was a young fella as well. But so much to get through over the weekend, Shane. And I know we get to the goal of the week maybe later on in the week. But Mark Rogers threw up a performance yesterday for Scariff, one of the great individual displays. 4-12, absolutely outrageous. And I'd encourage anybody on Twitter there just to have a look. Derek Lynch put up a little video of a goal that Mark Rogers got, where he's absolutely brilliant. Horse it up.
Yeah, because this lad, he's ready to explode onto the inter-county scene, assuming that he stays fully fit. Sorry, I just whipped this back to the start again. It's, obviously not the greatest footage, but that's Mark Rogers on the ground there, winning the ball, flicks it on, goes again. He's an absolute star on the way for, like, if Clare can get him at the very top of the sod during the middle of the summer, I think he could just be a huge revelation for them. And Scariff are producing good hurlers. Patrick Crotty's another one. But unbelievable stuff for him. To put up that sort of a tally is ridiculous.
He's so fast as well, Shane. Obviously, there's probably a greater potential for hamstring problems because he's that fast and he's so explosive. But Derek Lynch actually had it, and he was right because I even timed it myself. Keane Nolan had him on the ground, and within 5 seconds, not only was Rogers up, he had gotten the ball, collected it in a ruck, given a 1-2, taken the 1-2 back, and finished to the net. That's the sort of pace they're dealing with here. And even the glimpses that we've seen at county level, this lad has hit the ground running to me at county level. He came on, he was very good in that quarter final against Wexford this year, when maybe a lot of other lads weren't shining. He came on and was big. And they have a lot of, you go through the Clare Senior Hurling Championship, which we will over in time. There was a lot of lads put up big performances, particularly in attack. But he's definitely one for the future. He's one for the now, probably as well. Yeah. Realistically, but that was just one of many things that happened over the weekend. But probably a bit of unsavory stuff that we'll have to get into as well, Shane. Yet more referee controversy over the weekend. There was a minor game abandoned in Mayo after an incident, and the Wexford County Board are launching an investigation into alleged referee assault there after a junior football championship game. You might just go into them in a bit more detail. Like, unfortunately, it's a recurring theme that we're seeing in most weeks now, and probably something's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think it will, because we had what happened a few weeks ago in Roscommon. We saw last year a couple of incidents in Laois. We saw the underage game down in Wicklow. So it's happening more and more and more. And the one in Wexford, this happened apparently between St. Joseph's and Our Ladies at White Rock Hill yesterday. Wexford GA said in a statement last night, any threatening or abusive behaviour towards our match officials of any kind, they'll strongly condemn it. And I mean, what else do you say about this sort of stuff? There's going to be an investigation. Garda Síochána will be involved. They're going to be supported by Wexford GA. Then the Mayo GA one, that one happened in Josie Munley Park, involved a non-playing adult coming onto the field. And I mean, I was thinking about this more. What can be done about this? And I think the first step that the GA could look at, obviously we know lifetime bans, all that sort of stuff should be looked at. But in terms of ensuring that people are captured when they do it, when they do perpetrate these sort of incidents, what about just bringing a GoPro into the situation? Because I was just thinking about it. These things are not particularly expensive at all. It's very easy to just strap it around your chest like that. We see it happening in ladies Gaelic football over the years, the referee cam. We see it in rugby. Why not just have it strapped there to a referee, a bit like a dash cam? Just put a GoPro on a referee. Just tell him every time, just put it on you for the match. And it's easy to just get this little thing that straps it around you, the same as like a GPS or whatever, very similar. And then if there's an incident in a match, it's caught. Even for someone who would perpetrate one of these things, they come onto the field and they'll see the camera there. You probably would think twice about even approaching a referee. And then in a situation where maybe a case of somebody decides to rip the camera off a referee, that in itself would be a lifetime ban. Because then you're never going to do that. You're never going to go down that road. And you'll have witnesses who say, yeah, they pulled the camera off him. Grant, you're gone. You're done. But if they don't pull off the camera and you hit the referee or whatever, you see this threatening behavior, you can say, right, it's all on camera. It's a very durable system and it's very low cost one. I think that's a decent step.
I think it's mad that we even have to talk about this to that level. It's mind blowing, really. I suppose even before a step like that, I think every ground that is hosting any sort of a game, there has to be like an excursion area that people have to stay outside. And if it's a case of just the manager on the sideline and the players on the pitch and the referee and the umpires, and the linesman, and that's it, then that's the way we need to go. I think your step is, I'm not saying it's nuclear or anything like that, but I would hope that we don't have to go that far. I'd hope, like, by rule, we're just going to have to make sure at every venue that a match has been held, be it go games or whatever it is, listen, I see it in goal games and I see the managers on the pitch, and I totally get that because they're just encouraging and young lads, and we were the same. You don't know what you're doing and you need somebody to say, go over there, and it's totally, there's nothing threatening about it or anything like that, or they're not trying to intimidate a referee. And a lot of the time those managers are even refereeing the games. But we need to set up some sort of an excursion limit. I think if we have to go to the level that you're saying there with a GoPro, it's hugely worrying. But I'd say to this, we're very close to that. We're nearly on top of it now. And these incidents are going to have to be, I think, dealt with very, very harshly. And maybe there'll be harsh punishments for the people involved. But if that sets some sort of a precedent of what you can and can't do in the GA, you just don't see it at rugby, Shane. You just don't, there is a respect for the referees. You don't see it. The captain is the only one allowed to talk to the referee during a match. And that's it. There's even the management teams at international and club level, a lot of the time, they're not even on the touchline. And it's a much safer environment, I'd say, for referees. It's much more respectful. And it seems to work a lot better. But we're going to have to hit the nuclear button on this fairly quickly because this is becoming a weekly occurrence. Yeah,
I'm even just looking here on Google. You can get cheap knockoff GoPros for 50 quid. If you're a referee, well, what's the downside of doing it? It's not expensive. And it's going to provide that extra layer of security because people are going to think twice. And even if someone does go at you, you've now got proof. There's a reason that people, on Deliveroo bikes or taxi men or whatever, there's a reason to have GoPros. They're not expensive and it gives them that extra level of security or something to fall back on if they need it. So can anyone out there, comments-wise, viewer-wise, do you see this as a good idea or a bad idea? Let me know.
Yeah, some interesting comments in there. Red Lad just said, "Who'd be a ref nowadays? Almost no one's in your corner," and that's true. I've seen referees escorted out of various venues over different decisions, right or wrong. Flash just says, "Ref has always been a thankless job, but it's getting fairly bad now. Stop having certain characters involved in underage GA. They're using children to fulfill their Jose Mourinho fantasies." And he just goes on to say, "Every referee possible needs a mic camera on them for games." And he just added this, I think it's a good point. "Look at how much respect was shown to the referee in the Kerry final when he had the mic on them. Fellas were chirping but pulled back when they knew the mic was there." And it is maybe a bit of, yeah, I don't know. I think it's just probably a bit of safety for a referee. Hopefully that he or she will never need to use, but there is a bit of safety there as well.
Yeah, and we see here Mike Murphy commenting on Twitter. He says, "If I was a ref, I'd definitely wear one. Something needs to change. So hard to get refs. Clubs pleading, but nobody wants the hassle." So, I mean, if like, I know what you're saying when you say it's a nuclear option, but at the same time, it doesn't take much to make it happen. So that's why I just think that it's a bit of a no-brainer in a way.
The only thing is, Shane, like, you've seen how slow we are to adapt to things in the GA. Now, in fairness, part of it is wrong. The fact that, you know, even online ticketing is now everywhere in the GA, and that we've probably phased out the elderly a fair bit. And I don't like how we've done that at all. And there's not cash on a lot of turnstiles. We've moved very quick in that regard, but I don't know how quick we would be to put something like having a GoPro in the rule book or something like that. Just historically, how slow we have been to react to certain things. But this is hitting a point now where something seriously needs to happen quickly before we have no referees, and we already have a referee shortage at this stage. Part of me would think at times that I'd like to be a referee and like to explain decisions to players. I'd probably err on the side of the defender from time to time and let good hard hurling go. But part of me would like to be, and then I'm kind of thinking, like, listen, do you need parents calling you up on some decision in an under 13 match? Do you need to be getting abuse going downtown as well? Part of me would like to do it, and then another part of me, the other part of the brain, just says, like, just have a bit of sense, like, you're only walking yourself into trouble there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so there was a huge amount of late drama and matches over the weekend. We're going to talk about penalties in a while, but this stuff from Antrim. So Antrim GA tweeted, "I do not believe it. Adam Loughran's stunning last gasp winning goal in the 24th minute of extra time sends Ahagalan through to the final of Antrim there. They were up against Portland. So look at this. It was 2-10 to 18 at the time, so there were 2 points down. They needed a goal. Here it is.
Keep it in, he has kept it in. Oh, he feeds it out as well. There's still a chance. They need a goal. Loughran! Oh my goodness! I cannot believe it.
That's fantastic stuff there from Loughran, isn't it?
Outrageous. Such a good finish. You're kind of looking and thinking, how is there not maybe more bodies back in around the area when they obviously needed a goal to go through? But a beautiful finish when the chance arose. There was some amount of club games this weekend that had that last minute drama, that had that ball in around the square, and I know you're going to bring up a little bit more here, just how this
is Clonogh against Moortown. It was that close to Moortown getting a late goal to level it all. Look at that little flick, and
even Shane, when you're looking at the lads in the line looking over, like, and it's that close, it's a lick of paint probably between staying in the championship or getting a draw and being out of the championship. And we talked about Tyrone the other day. Tyrone is so cutthroat with this knockout championship. I think the top two in the league in Tyrone are gone. We'll go into it probably a bit more later on, but just so cutthroat. It's such a difficult thing to be out of the championship at this stage. This is an unfortunate one. This is a John Terry kind of eat your heart out moment.
Yeah, that was Loch McCrory against Derry Loughlin, and that would have won the game at the very, very end there as well. Very, very unfortunate. I mean, I thought it was interesting. There was an own point in Laois scored over the weekend. So, a guy was just trying to play the ball across the defence. He had a free, and he just sliced it back over his own bar. It was shared everywhere last night, but now all of a sudden it seems to have been deleted across the board. So he obviously took it pretty hard. Now, we can all laugh, but I suppose if it was you in that situation, maybe you'd take it tough as well. But yeah, it's a tough one, I suppose, because it was like a Laois semi-final.
Yeah, Flash just asked, can someone explain to me what happened at own point at the weekend? What was even attempting to do? And it's just like, it can happen. I remember, it's funny enough, we're actually warming up for when I played Offaly minor football, we were warming up for Leinster semi-final against Clare, and I went to give a pass. Just say you were directly in front of me, 40 yards, and I skewed it that far right, like it was down in the middle of the Kildare warm-up, like literally about 100 yards away. And that's where the ball ended up. It went through the Kildare warm-up and actually went out a gate and under a wire that was there in No More Park. That's how badly skewed it was. And that's probably what happened in that game yesterday. I could have just put it out there on Twitter, and it'd be interesting to see what sort of responses we get from our viewers now. Like, what's the most bizarre score you've seen in hurling or football? Like, that was definitely not the first own point that was scored. There was an own point in the Dublin Football Championship a couple of years ago. I think there was one in the Tip Championship. There was one in the Clare football final from a couple of years ago as well, in a county final, and an own point scored. I suppose one of the most bizarre ones I've seen, would even going back to just a score that someone got, and it wasn't an own score like that. It was that one that went in off Bubbles' head in Thurles in that league game, and it's just like, it just flew off the top of his head and just took a reaction, and it was never going to be stopped. Is there anything in particular? I think if we brought in other sports, we might even get more bizarre. But in hurling and football, what's the kind of maddest score you've seen?
I suppose as a young lad, my cousin batting a ball back into his own net and being fairly inconsolable after it was quite funny. I told you before about somebody taking a shot in a match I was playing in when I was under 14. And I was marking a girl at the time. It clipped her helmet around the 21 and went into the top corner. So that was a fairly unusual one. And I suppose, like, there's definitely been plenty of own goals. Like Mayo in the All-Ireland final to score 2 own goals is absolutely insane. And let's see, Jack 2022 says, I had a relative, can't say any more than that, scored an own point. So it does kind of happen. And I think Tip this year, was it Carl Barr was playing a ball back to Brian Hogan. It almost ended up, it nearly went over Brian Hogan's head, and it could have been, I can't remember if it was a goal or a point, but we're going to see more of it because the goalkeeper's been brought into play more. So sooner rather than later, a ball's going to end up in someone's net.
The one thing about it is, what was the one thing that you were told as a young fella growing up playing hurling or football?
Don't play the ball back across the goal.
Never, ever, ever play the ball back across your own goal. And at least the one thing, if you do hand pass, like if you were to hand pass a ball back, that wouldn't be counted as a goal. That would have to be pulled back, because a goal cannot be scored from a hand pass, be it an own hand pass or, an attacking team hand pass. Whereas if you kick the ball, it's kind of open season, whether it goes over the bar. That would be an own point, I presume, actually. Yeah, of course it would be, yeah. But it's just mad. That was the one thing we were always told. And I know the games have changed, but we would have always been told, never pass the ball across your own goal.
Yeah, it's going to happen soon. Sorry, the voice went up a few octaves there. But there was penalties in a few games over the weekend. We're going to talk about Kilcoo just about scraping through in Down. But in the Dublin Hurling Championship, Crave Kieran met Plunkett's in a relegation playoff. It went to extra time. It was level at the end of extra time. It then went to penalties. And I see Declan Drake, journalist, tweeting, surely a replay is what both of these sides deserved after being level at full time and extra time. Drama, yes, with penalties, but for me, not the way to settle it with a lottery. And I see Finbar McCarthy, who's a journalist in Cork, tweeting, I agree, Cork GA changed this year for relegation games. If still level after extra time, it goes to a replay. So it was 6-5 on penalties and sudden death. At the end of that game, Plunkett's went through. Crave Kieran, who of course are a very historic club in Dublin hurling, they're gone down. So that's a huge bitter pill for them to swallow. But would you agree with that, or would you say, look, that's the rules, everyone knew beforehand, you could have objected before the start of the year, why didn't you object then? But here we are, they're relegated now, and it's a tough one to take, but them's are the breaks.
Yeah, I just don't see, like, one of the main reasons why penalties are introduced is to shorten the season and make sure that games aren't running into games. In a relegation playoff/final, there are no games running into other games. This is the final game of their season either way. They're not going into any other championship or anything like that. I honestly think any finals penalties should not decide any finals, be it a county final or whatever, and a relegation game, which to me, there's probably even more pressure and even more at stake in a relegation game. I just don't see why. Time is not an issue with them. I don't see any reason why. I know what you're saying. Teams could have objected. No one thinks they're going to be in a relegation final. You're not going, you know what I mean? You're not going to object to something that hopefully you're not going to be in. But to me, it's something that all clubs probably need to come together, maybe as they did in Cork or as a decision was made. To me, it's just way too harsh of a way to finish a game. And as well as that, Shane, I just don't think the best team doesn't always win in that case. You know, is the best team the team that has 3 to 4 guys or girls that can put away a penalty? Not necessarily. Whereas generally, the best team will win during normal time, extra time. Like barring, you know, there's a big injury or a couple of sending off or something like that. The best team will win. The second best team will lose. So I don't like it. I'm not a fan of it at all.
Yeah, both teams had, probably including injury times in the 4 halves, probably had 90 minutes to win the game. I mean, it had to end at some stage, but
yeah, could have ended the week after. It could have ended the week after.
I'll be honest, I was playing devil's advocate there. I'm on board with you. I think something like a relegation playoff, there's no reason not to have that. But you know, the likes of a quarterfinal, semi-final, something like that, I don't really have a problem with penalties because, as I said before, I think it adds to the drama. And John Quain says,
yeah, just I was going to go into John's comment there. He said, remember Kerry scored a goal against Tip back in the day. It was a clear wide ball. Kerry won in the end, but could have been different if that goal didn't stand. Offaly scored a phantom goal against Laois and ended up winning the All-Ireland after. So, these things can happen. Them's are the breaks, and that's kind of what a team can do after getting maybe a slice of luck. But I remember that was, you know, that clearly hit the stanchion from the side. I thought it was obvious enough, but listen, the umpires were obviously blindsided at the time. There was a controversial enough point in the Offaly final yesterday, which we'll maybe get to later. But again, like, they showed the back view of it. I didn't think it was over. They showed the front view. I thought it was 50-50, and it was a Tullamore point. I was just happy that Tullamore weren't a point ahead at the end, and we're talking back about that point. But yeah, lots of various contentious things over the weekend.
Yeah, even Owen Kelly hit a penalty that looked clearly wide in one of the games of the Tip Championship against Toom, and it was given. And I can't remember what championship it was in, but do you remember this here? Somebody scored a goal, but it hit off the hurley bag inside the net, came back out, and it wasn't given.
Oh,
where was that?
It's only about a month ago. Can't remember what championship it was, but the big thing was there is that the umpires should be policing the line and making sure that there's nothing, you know, they were literally, you know, half a foot behind the line. They have to be at the back of the net or wherever it is, but they definitely can't, the ball definitely can't be possible to come back into play off them or whatever. But I don't know if I've seen a weekend of club drama like this before. Like you were talking, there's like often Wexford it was, it's often we talk about, you know, one game with a last minute goal or whatever. This is the great thing about video footage now, is that we do get to see all these mad things, and I'm sure we'll talk about that last gaff save in the League Championship as well. One of the great game saving saves, but there was just so much drama from every corner of the country. It was brilliant.
Yeah, look at this lies from Fergus Butler. What about the ghost goal Tip versus Waterford in 2018? Fergus, that was a mile over the line. I don't know what you're talking about.
Just on that, because it doesn't generally happen at inter-county. What are the other big kind of faux pas at inter-county scores that were given? Like, I'm talking about Offaly in the 80s. We're talking about Kerry football in the 90s there. It's generally not something, you know, that happens now because there are so many eyes looking. There's generally video footage on these games. Like, can you think of any other big inter-county ones recently?
Not recent, but one that comes to mind is Clare Tip 1997. Tip had a point that was over the bar and it wasn't given. I'm trying to think, was it Declan Ryan who scored it that day? Somebody I'm sure will comment in and let us know. Actually, Thomas O'Shea has clarified that one on the goal that went behind the line but hit the hurley bag. Aidan Rochford for St. Anne's hit the hurley bag and came out, lost on penalties afterwards. There you go. Like, in recent times, I suppose, now that we know that Hawkeye is very faulty, we can confirm that Bubbles did actually score the winner in 2014. Yeah, look, John Quinn, Hawkeye Galway football this year, Shane Walsh.
Yeah, like they're just so the Joe Sheridan one was mad when you think back on it, and Loud, God only knows when Loud will get to win a Leinster title as well. God only knows when anybody will get to win a Leinster title outside of Dublin, to be honest with you. Flash
Kilkenny.
And he's right, Darragh Donovan's line ball as well. Who knows? And obviously A. Sully says there as well that Barry Nash's Hawkeye as well, when it was calibrated for football. Outside of like, it's amazing, and I do like generally when Hawkeye is working properly, it is a big addition. I think actually, now that I think of it, the Dave Clark's son that was in goals for the Limerick under-20s this
Honor
year.
Henry Clark,
Yeah, that point that was given was very, very contentious. The umpires had it given before the ball was even over the bar, if it was ever over the bar.
Yeah, and then maybe the two that Brian Hogan caught against Wexford in 2019. And remember, it had gone up the other end and John McGrath had scored a goal. So
that's right. Yeah.
Potentially, again, not to be, too Tipperary focused when answering this question, but, that's a couple of examples there. Should we talk about Cork over the weekend?
We should, yeah. So much, it's like, it's probably the traditional final, and it's been a fair while coming, but Blackrock and the Barrs are going to meet in the Cork Senior Hurling Final. Blackrock had a 321 to 21 points win over Erin's Own. Pretty comprehensive, you'd have to say. Alan Conley really on form. He ended up with 6 from play. Tyke Deasy with 1-4. Robbie Cotter with 1-3. Robbie Cotter looks like a really talented player. I don't know if you saw for the goal. He actually, flicking the ball down, that's next level now. Now he shouldn't.
Describe it to people who mightn't have seen it there.
Yeah, so the ball was coming into Cotter, and he had a couple of yards on the defender, and you think he's going to catch it, but he puts the hurl up, flicks the ball back in the other direction. So in one movement, he takes he sells the defender one side, he goes to the other side. He's able to solo in and drill it to the net. Now, the defender probably should have been closer to him. There's probably too much. He probably had too much space and room to maneuver. But it was just a really, really good goal. And he got that goal at the end of their quarter final as well to force extra time, and they eventually came through on penalties. But he definitely looks like someone that could potentially make a mark for Cork in the years to come. But I thought that was pretty comprehensive. Most of the big names for the Rockies really stood up. Louis Mulqueen, who obviously won a county title with Mellows, they were the last team to win in Galway outside of Thomas's. He's gone down to Cork. Fair spin down to Cork from where he's based, and looks like he has them back to the levels they were at when they won a county final a couple of years ago.
Yeah, Cassius King says Alan Connolly's turned into a serious player. Was very good for Cork this year, and he should only get better. Yeah, I think so, definitely. He, at times when he turned and ran at Erin's Own, it was lights out sort of stuff. He scored 9 points. 3 of those were from place balls. Tyke Deasy with 1-4, and you've mentioned Cotter already. He had 1-3. The Rockies, I thought in the first half they had plenty of goal chances, but instead lads were too inclined to take on their own shots rather than feeding people for simple goals. I suppose when you're coaching a team, that's something that would make you pull your hair out. You obviously want to give forwards the room to take on shots and feel like, go out there and do your thing. But at the same time, you just have to just draw a man, feed someone in for a handy goal. So that
really good forward chain knows when he gets a sniff. He gets a sniff and he knows there's something on. And I know that's a criticism Ben O'Connor had at the Cork Seniors a few years ago, that too many lads were taking the handy point when a goal was on. Whereas they probably went the other way in recent years and were sometimes forcing a goal when the goal wasn't on. But there's times when it's on and there's times when it's not on. And when it's on, you have to go for the throat.
Yeah, and there was a couple of times against Galway that Cork this year took on ridiculous goal chances from 20 yards out when they could have just done a hand pass and put someone in for an easy one and they would have won the game. But when do you, like St. Finbarrs are in their first final since 1993. So obviously it's before that since they last played Blackrock in a final. Can you believe it's 1982 since the two of these big giants of Cork hurling were last in a final? Isn't that quite something?
That's bizarre, yeah. Geez, when you think of the history there involved, when you think of the All-Ireland club titles involved between the two clubs, it is a bit mad. Just going to the Finbarrs game a bit more, the Barrs absolutely tore off from the start against Newtown Chandram. It finished 225 to 20 points. I think it was 1-9 to a point at one stage. Conor Toomey got a red card for Newtown, and funnily enough, they actually bounced back from it pretty well. I think it was 113 to 11 around the break. But I don't know. I just couldn't get over how much space some of the Barrs had, particularly the likes of Conor Cahalane in the middle of the field. Like, he just seemed like there was nobody on him. It was open season every time he got the ball, which was a strange one. And listen, the scores in the two semi-finals would probably suggest what we were saying about the Cork Championship generally being quite open, high scoring, exhibition style games. Like, defence is definitely not at a premium in the Cork Championship. It does lead to some great scores, but again, I'll bring it back to it again, it probably brings back the big question or big problem that Pat Ryan has coming in with Cork. How does he get bed down a solid defence, and how does he get that kind of mean streak into them?
Yeah, and I mean, we got a bit of abuse not so long ago for talking about the Cork Championship and calling it a bit of a sort of a exhibition tennis sort of stuff, ball up from one end to the other without tackling. So people, get your comments in there. Let us know. I mean, talk to us positively about this Cork Championship. You mentioned Conor Cahalane already. He looked really good. Ben Cunningham was slinging over points from all angles. Obviously, his father Ger is over the team, and huge for him, I suppose, to get the team back into the first final since 1993. Brian Hayes looks very good. We saw him playing for the footballers as they got the All-Ireland Club semi-final last year. But to be fair to Newtown Chandram, after going down to 14 men, they went on and they were 1-9 to a point behind. Like, that's staring down the barrel of the gun. But they went and they hit 5 points in a row midway, or not long after that. So you'd have to give them a nice bit of credit there that they kept going, and maybe they can build on next season. And I suppose for Aaron's own, just to reflect back on that first game as well, Micheál O'Halloran scored 1-2 for Blackrock, but Robbie O'Flynn with 12 points, and some of them were excellent scores. He scored 5 frees, but 12 in total. And there's more to come from Aaron's own, you'd imagine. But the two best teams definitely seem to be in the final this year. Although I'm sure Glen Rovers are frustrated that they didn't have Patrick Horgan in their quarter final.
Oh, of course, yeah. Just a word on Ben O'Connor, the Barr's Ben O'Connor. Like, he's a bit of a phenomenon. I think, like, he's an animal of a player. And even Conor Cahalane was solo and true, going at about 80% at one stage, and Ben O'Connor passes him out to be an option to take a pass. Like, here's a lad you could probably say he's a small bit raw, but I just think he has an awful lot of potential, and I think he's nearly your prototype intercounty hurler in the modern era. I think he has a huge amount to offer, massive amount to offer.
I was kind of surprised that Conor Cahalane went out of favour a little bit this year with Cork, because I thought he'd had a great 2021. Like, the way he set up Brian Hayes' goal with that brilliant run and hand pass directly off the stick, I thought was great early in the game. Great finish by Hayes as well. But he's a player I would imagine would be fairly key if Cork are going to kick on under Pat Ryan next year. Or would you feel similarly?
Yeah, to me, he's a worker bee, Shane. He's a worker bee who's able to cover an awful lot of ground. Probably can maybe add a small bit more on the scoreboard maybe than a Luke Meade type player. But I think Cork need those type of players. I think Cork have loads of silky players. I think they probably need more players that are really able to do the hard yards. And, we said this before, you pick your 15 best players or you pick a team. It can't be all silky players. It has to be your Bonner Matter style players. It has to be your John Power style players. You need those are the players. I always say, like, to me, one of Barr's best players outside of all the greats they had was a wing forward that probably very few people know, a fella by the name of Liam Power, who would pull timber and break ball and stop halfbacks from hurling and win puck outs and do all the hard yards. He rarely scored, but he did work for everybody else. And I think Cork need a couple more of those players. Probably need at least one in attack in midfield, and probably need two in attack, I'd say, as well.
Yeah, and Nafina brought on a lad yesterday. He must have been 6'3" or 4", and he was a good target man. And as I said in the commentary, a big ignorant joke, and I meant it in a positive way. And you probably meant the same about Liam Power.
Oh, well, Liam wouldn't take too fondly to that now, because he'd always think of himself as a very classy player, because he's maybe slightly delusional. But I've so much, like Andrew describes him there. Andrew Sullivan describes him as, you need a few robust agricultural types. Those are the guys that will win or lose championships, to me, I have to say. Those are the lads that will win or lose championships. Those sort of guys, and Cork need a couple more of them.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but the centre forward that Mount Sion had against Ballygunner in the final probably didn't look like he was going to be the slickest player in the world, and wasn't. But by God, he got on an awful lot more ball than nearly every other player they have. So you need that balance of ignorance and silk, as I like to say, the iron fist to go into the velvet glove. Huh?
There you go, yeah, exactly.
Right, the Tipperary quarterfinals were on over the weekend, and the teams that are through: Drom and Inch, Killerwan, Killadangan, and Upperchurch. And what I find interesting about this is, I was thinking, okay, not too many of these teams have won a huge amount of county titles. And Killerwan, they've won 4, but the other 3 teams, Upperchurch, Drom and Inch, and Killadangan, have won 1 apiece. So Upperchurch's only ever title was in 1894. They were called Drumban back then. Drom and Inch won their only one in 2011, Killadangan in 2020. Killerwan, they won it in 1901 when they were called Duets. I think it was Lahorna Duets. And then the later generation, actually 97, actually maybe it's 5 titles they have. Somebody from Killerwan, I'm sure, will correct me. But it was that generation in the 70s and 80s, the one that went on and won that All-Ireland title in 86. they're the ones that collected a nice few titles between them. But it's kind of interesting between them all. They haven't had much dominance over the years. Like, we don't have the sort of record title holders, a Thurles or, you know, someone like that in the latter stages. So every club here will feel, well, we've just as much of a historical right to win this title as the next.
Yeah, there's no, you're not going to be historically favouring anybody here. The only history you're going on is probably the last couple of years, realistically. Interesting one here. There's a good few of the Shinrone lads from Offaly were in Thurles the other day for the Kilruane game. So they'd be basically neighbouring parishes. Shinrone would be essentially neighbours with Clough-Jordan, and they're both in the latter stages. Shinrone are in the Offaly final and Kilruane are in the Tipperary semi-final. That was a tight game with Kilruane, McDonough's and Tumivara, and it was kind of just a bit of a push at the end, I'd say, with Buggy O'Mara coming in. Seamus Hennessy got 2 lovely scores as well, coming in off the bench. I know you're a player you were fond of anyway, but he did link the play lovely the other day. It was Drom real creative eye. Like we played Kilruane in a practice game about 3 or 4 years ago, and I was kind of blown away by this lad physically, I would say, just the pace of him and how kind of robust he was. He can be a player at times that comes in and out of games, but like, he linked up some lovely scores the other day. He was able to give a killer pass that a lot of players cannot give. And I'm sure he's someone that you'd hope and expect to feature in Liam Cahill's plans going forward. Yeah,
Jerome Cahill, I mean, even when he was underage, that last year under Liam Cahill underage, Tipperary were scoring goals for fun. Was it 8 goals against Wexford? Was it at least 4 against Cork in the final? And he was central to an awful lot of it. The way he set up the goals for Cian O'Kelly and Buggy O'Mara, and even other goal chances that weren't taken in the game for Kilruane, he's that difference maker. He's not worried about, will I get my name on the score sheet? He's thinking, how can we win this game? And he's just got that pace where just the acceleration off the block, and he's running straight down the centre of the defence, and he gets everyone scrambling backwards. He just, alarm bells are going off in defence when he's running. But the thing is, I'm not entirely sure if inter-county hurling is what he wants to do with himself. Obviously, everyone has their own life and they're entitled to do what they want to do. He was in there in 2019. He has an All-Ireland title to his name already, but he's just a player that's built for Croke Park. And Tip are going to be down enough players next year due to injury and different reasons. And, you know, you're hoping that the likes of Brian O'Mara, Kieran Connolly, Niall O'Mara, that he'd return, that Tipperary would have some of these players involved. But definitely Jerome Cahill is somebody that Tipperary really need in there. And to be honest, Cian O'Kelly is another one that he reminds me of Conor Boylan for Limerick. You know, maybe not always the classiest, has a score and will run at you, test you out physically and hound the opposition coming out with the ball. He's another one. But Jerome Cahill, I don't know if Liam Cahill will be able to get him in, but certainly everything should be done to try and get him in.
I think that'll be a fascinating aspect of Tip going forward under the Cahill, the amount of sway that he potentially could have with, you know, the bulk of those players that he had involved with the minors and brought through to the 20s and the 21s. And it's just going to be interesting to see if he can bring a player like that back into the fold, because he has an awful lot to offer at inter-county level. But as you say there, inter-county is not for everybody. I do think, and I said it about Jack McCaffrey coming back and Paul Mannion coming back as well, inter-county is a huge commitment, but it is still it has been made a little bit less by the split season now, by the fact that things are a bit more condensed, and that, like, even if you win the All-Ireland, you will still have, okay, you go back playing with your club, obviously, but you will still have August to go and, you know, do things, shall we say, if you're in college or if you're a teacher and you're off for the summer. So there's a bit more kind of wiggle room there now, and I think it's I don't know if it's a bit more of an incentive than it's not a huge incentive to go into inter-county if it's not a commitment you want to make, but they've incentivized it a bit more. I'll put it to you that way.
Yeah, so I mean, we talked a bit about Kilruane here. Tumivara obviously played their part in the game as well, and it looked like the game was gone from them late on after that second goal from Buggy O'Mara. Now, I'm sure certainly Tipperary people, but people outside of the county too, will probably remember him for that performance in the under-21 All-Ireland final in 2010 when he was just sumptuous that day against Galway, and just unbelievable in the air, but would have been dogged by injuries over the last number of years. Now, he played plenty of times for Tipperary seniors as well between league and championship in the couple of years after that, but injuries have ruined him. And because of that, he hasn't featured for the last couple of years. He wasn't even named on the programme. I think he was down as a selector for this match, but he wore number 33, was brought on, And as I said, hasn't been able to do much training, which would explain why he's probably not in the shape of his life at the moment. I don't want to be mean, but he's not at the top shape. But geez, the finish for the goal, it was hand passed across by Cahill and a one-time bat into the back of the net. He is a goal scorer, like he is a difference maker, and maybe he'll be there for the semi-final as well.
What championship game did he start, Shane? Am I wrong? Did he start against Cork in 2010 out of the blue? Or am I thinking I'm mixing him up with Timmy Hammersley? He started a championship game kind of from the cold, I'm going to say. It was under Sheedy. I think it was under Sheedy, but I could be mixing up. He definitely started a big championship game. I think it was in Munster.
He did start that game in 2010, yeah. So he would have been very, very young at that stage. But I can also remember him playing against Kilkenny in that All-Ireland semi-final, the disastrous one in 2012. And he was one of what I remarked after that game is Tipperary had too many forwards who were looking to go left and go right and tap it over the bar or whatever. He was the only one who was getting the ball, turning, running straight up the guts that day. And like his injuries, and I mean Seamus Hennessy as well, who also came on, another killer on lad. Those lads were two massive losses due to injury. And Hennessy came on and scored 2 points. Yeah. Now, at the same time, he sort of was dropping into 2 brilliant points, dropping into his own half a lot. And Josh McCarthy was pushing up on him and did a bit of damage going the other way. So it didn't all just work as simply as came on, got the few scores. There was a bit of both ways going on there. Jack Delaney scored some goal for Toom as well. Can't remember who was running through, but he was fed. And just the way he finished was an absolute cracking finish. But yeah, Killer One or True. We've already kind of mentioned that. Did we already mention that Upper Church or True, Drom and Inch or True? That game was on RTE2, 21 points to 18 over Loughmore. But like for Loughmore, the injuries, they've mounted too much this year. John McGrath was gone, Ed Connolly was gone. Early on in this game, John Maher was gone. Kieran Connolly didn't feature at all. So, I mean, at what stage are you going to say, is a team going to really struggle to get the scores on the board? They did all right. They did pretty good here, but ultimately it was just a bridge too far.
There's only so far you can go when, like, you're talking about, like, you're after listing off 4 or 5 of their best players, and a fella who got man of the match 7 Sundays in a row across 2 codes, like, it does catch you eventually. It's mad to think that there's a double on in Tipperary and it's not Loughmore though, isn't it? Like you would have got fair odds on that. I didn't realise it until I saw a piece in the 42 during the week that Eamon Corkin was actually manager of both codes in the Brackens as well. And I was having a conversation with someone about this the other day. It is a thing that makes sense, I think, to have, if you have somebody, and there's not too many of them out there, that could manage a right good club team in both codes. But it just makes that juggling act so much easier. It's probably, I'm not 100% sure how to do it in Loughmore, but it's usually a manager for both codes, 2 selectors for hurling and 2 selectors for football. So you're bringing in the expertise there. And I know obviously Mick Dempsey was involved with them last year, who is the perfect man actually that you could probably bring in at both codes. But it just kind of gets rid of a lot of messing, I think.
Yeah. You want to read Richard's comment there?
Yeah. Richard Hogan just says Loughmore blew it. The wides killed them coming down the stretch. 4 horrendous wides in the last 20 minutes. I suppose maybe you're not going to say their luck ran out as well, but when you're trying that hard and you need to force things, everything probably needs to go over, and it's probably those times when maybe you're not as relaxed and the ball just skews to your left or the ball just skews to your right. But in fairness to Drom, they did what they had to do. They eked it out. It wasn't particularly pretty, but they got the job done. They've probably lost games like that over the last couple of years, so it was a nice way to get through.
Yeah, and Podge Campion had a very good game at centre back, and to be fair to Drom, they worked the ball around pretty well. They're not afraid to throw it around to each other. So he was excellent at centre back. Wouldn't be shocked if he's involved in Liam Cahill's plans for next year. Seamus Callanan got on the score sheet late on, knocked over most of his frees as well. And he was asked after the game, does he expect to be part of the setup under Liam Cahill next year? And, how are things going to go and all that kind of stuff. And didn't really want to answer, to be honest. So I'd say he's possibly decided. There's 1 or 2 things. He hasn't decided yet, or maybe he has decided but doesn't want to make things about himself before the county championship is over. Like he only went 34 there a couple of weeks ago. But I think he still has something to offer Tipperary, even if it's not 70 minutes. Maybe it can be some days, maybe not every day, especially the breakneck speed of that Munster Championship, 4 games so quickly. But from a Tip point of view, I'd still like to see him in there.
I think he definitely has something to offer, Shane. It's just a matter of I wouldn't be a bit surprised if part of that as well was he's not 100% sure what his body's going to be like at a given time either. Do you know what I mean? Like I'd be at that stage as well where someone asks, "Oh, you right for the next game in 2 weeks' time?" And I'd be like, I don't know if we're going to get through training tonight. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and he's not like at that stage or anything like that. But I'm sure he, you know, with the injuries he's had, and particularly something like that with the back, which is just can be debilitating when it's not right. Part of it is probably he just refuses to get ahead of himself anymore. And I'd say, like a lot of lads now, he just unless you're after winning the county title, you don't really want to talk about the county because it's just tunnel vision on the club, and he wants to. He's got one county title under his belt, which probably helped to springboard his Tip career, and I'm sure he'd be mad to get another one.
Yeah, even though he'd already played in a couple of All-Irelands at that stage for Tip.
Yeah, but I would say if you're talking about what do you remember from Shamie Callan's county career, I think that would have given him a lot of confidence to go to the next level. Then we saw 14, 15, 16. Was it 4 times? He's been nominated 4 times for Hurler of the Year. He was on the scene, but I think he took his game to another level. I get you're playing devil's advocate again, but I do think that helped to give him a confidence to go to elite level where few have been.
Yeah, so you were talking about J.K. Bracken's been managed in both codes by Eamon Corcoran. So that's 2 weeks in a row, though, unfortunately, that group has suffered disappointment at the hands of Upperchurch Drumban. And funnily enough, 36 players who played last week, 33 of them saw game time again this week. So it is largely the same group, 16 for Church and 17 for Brackens. And Paddy Green had a goal scored after 12 seconds of this game. But J.K. Bracken's really recovered well, and you know, they were up by 121 to 213 with 52 minutes gone. Didn't score again, 8 points in a row for Upperchurch going down the stretch. A lot of those coming from Paddy Green and really, really good frees here. And
what happened there, Shane? What they were the Brackens were in a winning position here. Like they were, really good position, like. Yeah,
well, you're talking 24 points to 19, but with 8 minutes to go, they've been the form team. Andrew Ormond brought his tally up to 1-1. They were going well. Lyndon Fairbrother was hitting his free as well. I suppose maybe there's just that bit of white line fever, maybe a bit of tiredness creeping in, and there's no reason that they would be any more tired than Upperchurch, but you just don't entirely know. But it could be just one of these things where neither team is necessarily used to success. You know, Upperchurch have never won a divisional or county senior title in hurling or football, unless you count Drumban back 128 years ago, which, you know, obviously I'm sure the club does count that, but like Brackens will just feel like they left this behind them. They won their first mid-title this year. They were very good the last day out, getting through against Nina, and this will feel like a missed opportunity because, as we said at the top of this segment, it's wide open for anyone this year. And like Upperchurch probably get talked down a nice bit, you know, but there's no reason to now, because they have as good a chance as anybody left in here. They've good shooters. They've Paul Ryan, Jack Butler, as I said, is the good target man. The two Shanahans. Gavin Ryan is a good centre back there. Paddy Green, he scored 113 and 1-2 of that from play. 1-1 of that from play. So they have a lot of good. They have a lot of good going there. And do you know what? I said that Kildangan are probably the favourites. Going into this weekend, I said that, but they weren't overly impressive against Clonolty Rossmore. It was 114 to 112 for a finish, and a bit like Lockmore, when you look at who Clonolty had maybe before the start of the season versus now, they're down so many players. You know, we don't need to mention the obvious with Dylan Quirk, of course, sadly, and then they're down Conor Hammersley, who's in America, Timmy Hammersley is with Ballyboden, and then in the first, I think early on enough in the game, Jack Ryan, Declan Ryan's son, he has to go off injured. Then they have a red card that kills him. So after being 7-2 ahead after 22 minutes, they only scored 5 points for the rest of the game. And Kildangan, without playing all that well, they're back into a semi-final.
Yeah, Kildangan definitely wouldn't have blown you away from the bits I saw this anyway. Like considering the numerical advantage, I would, I'd say even the players available to them in comparison, as you mentioned, to what Clonolty Rossmore have available to them. Like Kildangan are favourites, but they're nearly favourites by default going into the last 4 and away, because they're definitely you wouldn't exactly be oozing confidence from them at the moment. And it's just such an opportunity for the 4 that are there. And Kildangan have obviously won it recently enough, but the other 3, such an opportunity for the McDonald's, I would say, and for Upperchurch Drumban in particular. like these sort of opportunities don't always arise. I said it when Rhinus were beaten in Offaly in the quarter-final as well. There was 4 teams left, and there was 4 teams left. You know, we hadn't won one in 14 years. Shinrone had never won one. Belmont had never been to a final, and Kilcormac had won 4. And it's just a door there for someone to push through, and it's kind of similar. It's kind of similar in Tipperary. It's going to be fascinating to see who does push it through.
Yeah, and it could be, I think, since Thurles last won it in 2017, it could be, again, a different winner every single year since, which kind of keeps it nice and fresh and interesting there. So Ty Gallagher and Paul Flynn, they were the ones who did most of the damage for Kildangan, and maybe Joe Gallagher as well as that ball winner in the first half when they weren't going well. Relegation semis, you might read out the results there to spare my voice.
I surely will. Yeah, the relegation semis, it was Mike Carkey Boris 120, Airog and Acarty Dunhill 17 points. So Airog and Acarty Dunhill will face Temple Derry Kenyans in that relegation final, the only final that no team wants to play in. Temple Derry were beaten by 24 points to 2-14 against Mullinahone. Owen Kelly had another big game for Mullinahone there and continues to do it at senior level. I think a lot of people potentially would have predicted that when they came up from Senior B when they beat Luray in that final a couple of years ago, that they may struggle at senior level. They've put in a couple of big displays, and they've obviously saved their bacon, and they're not in that relegation final either. So that's the Tipperary Championship. We'll go through Kilkenny there at the quarter-final stages. It was obviously the Ballyhale Shamrocks and Clare game was called off as a result of a bereavement, and I speak for you on this, Shane, as well. Just like to offer condolences to the Holden family on the passing of Joey's dad at the weekend. Very sad, and just condolences there to everyone in Ballyhale. They haven't had an easy time of it, definitely not the last couple of years. So sincere condolences from everyone in our game to everyone down in Ballyhale. The 3 games that were played, it finished Tullerone 18, Erin's 15. Now this was not a lucky game for Tullerone to get through, but things definitely didn't go right for them, and they still managed to kind of find a way. Now, if they'd been up against an even better class of opposition, they may not have got through. But Shane Walsh did an awful lot of the damage here. It's basically a 2-man full forward, I think, a lot of the time, with him and Rhode Dunn, who's on the under-20s and has been tipped to even going with the Kilkenny seniors next year, even though I think he's another 2 years under-20. They did most of the damage, with Shane Walsh delivering a man-of-the-match display. Conor Delaney kept Mossy Keown fairly quiet. And even Conor Fogarty, who people will probably wonder about his Kilkenny career and whether it's going to stretch into another season next year. He was probably one of the best players on the pitch. He fired 3 points from centre forward. But in the end, it wasn't enough. Tullerone finished 18, Erin's 15. And the winners of that will play the winners of Ballyhale and Clara. So you probably would say the tougher side of the semi-final draw there, and it probably looking like, I'd say, a Tullerone and a Ballyhale Shamrock semi-final. And then in the other 2 quarter-finals, it's amazing, Shane, we talked about this and kind of half teed it up, but it's amazing. The Village are one of these sides that can be going particularly poorly for a while and can turn things around, and have done it a good few times in recent years. They were beaten by the Bridge in the group stages, and there was a bit of a hoo-ha after, but they've managed to turn things around brilliantly here, and their scoring ratio has gone up massively from their league games. It finished James Stevens 120, Bennett's Bridge 115. Tygo Dwyer, who's in with the county squad, or was in with them last year anyway, in 2022, he at 1-2, and that was ultimately the difference. King Kenny actually operates at centre back for the Village, which is interesting. Wouldn't have been in a position I necessarily would have pegged for him, but he dictated affairs from there. And the Bridge were over-reliant on Nicky Clear from place balls, and a lot of their big hitters didn't really deliver. David Blanchfield at centre-back was probably their best, but a lot of their big players like Liam Blanchfield, Sean Morrissey and a few more just didn't deliver maybe on this occasion. And it kind of looks like for the second year running, potentially, that the Bridge have peaked too soon and, delivered their best in the league and then not delivered in the knockout stages, which is disappointing. And I just fly through the last game there as well. It was last quarter final was Dixborough 3-19, Mullina Vegas 1-11. So this was all one-way traffic. Andy Gaffney put up a big score for the Borough, and it's a big win for them, especially if Killian Buckley didn't feature. So that's a big win for them. What was it? 28 points to 14, double scores, and very impressive from the Borough. And it's a big city derby in the semi-final against the Village. So the Borough against the Village, and the winners are Clara and Ballyhale facing off against Tullerone. So all big hitters probably still standing in Kilkenny.
Yeah, and Tullaroan met Ballyhale already in the group stages, won that game. Ballyhale were down a couple of lads, of course. But, they did finish top of the group that had both teams in it. Borough Village, always good to see a nice big city clash. And Richard Hogan says David Blanchfield was very good despite his team not showing up. Killian was involved in the warm-up but did not start, that obviously being Killian Buckley. And Cassius King says Timmy Clifford is a good prospect coming for Kilkenny. Clare quarterfinals. It was all really one-sided stuff here, wasn't it? The average winning margin was 9 points, 9.25 points. 6 Mile Bridge beat Wolftones well, like 322 to 18 points. It was never close at all. It's kind of interesting after the game that Niall Gilligan was talking about some of the different players that performed, and he said we didn't really blood any players the last 3 or 4 years, which kind of came across as a small bit of a sideswipe or criticism of the previous management.
Well, yeah, you'd imagine so. Now, there's probably a caveat to it in that they were successful. They were going for 3 in a row last year. So sometimes with a winning side, you maybe don't make as many changes to a side that potentially is beaten. And now look at it, like they were beaten in the quarterfinal last year by Rhode, and there seems to be kind of wholesale changes. I think Jamie Shannon was very good for them at the weekend again. I think he put up 13 points from centre forward. Colin Malone didn't start either. David Kennedy came in for him. That was one of the young players that
he was one of the junior Bs last year, and now he's up and scoring a goal here.
yeah, it's mad, isn't it? But he was one of the young players maybe that Niall Gilligan was talking about. Great to see Gilligan involved there. God only knows if they win a county title there, it'll be yet another county title winning team that he's been involved in. But they've consistency wise, they've been the best team throughout Clare probably the whole way through, even though Rhode probably ripped up that small, but they had a huge win over Aina Kilnamona, finished 221 to 16 points. This game was on TV yesterday, obviously. Shane O'Donnell was in ridiculous form. He had 1-9 from play. The only thing I'd say about that is, like, if this was in the Cork Championship, we'd be giving out that there was no tackles going in. Like he seemed to have the freedom of the park. He really did. It was a really strange one because he's coming into this game. It's not like last year maybe where he's had an injury or two, or he's had some concussion issues. He's coming into this game on the back of a good club campaign so far, an outstanding inter-county campaign, and he was just let dictate affairs. I just thought it was a bit strange, but he's in serious form.
He is, but Aina Kilnamona seemed to be a mile off it here. It's hard to know, like, people who watch the game or who know the ins and outs of Aina Mona there, what is it exactly that's gone so wrong? Because this game was in the books early doors here, and there's actually an interesting comment as well. Does anyone else think Aidan McCarthy, who's of Aina Kilnamona, is the head of Verney? In all seriousness, though, wishing Jason McCarthy speedy recovery. It was a disgrace that it took so long for an ambulance to come, and that was desperate. Poor Jason McCarthy, very tough injury. And he's to wait such a long time. When you think that the hospital isn't all that far away, to have to wait that long, is it a sign of how disgracefully this country has been run by the successive terrible governments?
Yeah, I think it was the guts of an hour before they were able to get him off the pitch. In anything like this, speed is making sure that the injury doesn't end up being worse than it needs to be, and getting attended to professionally as quick as possible. And yeah, that was definitely very, very disappointing, and wish him all the best as well. Looks like a serious injury. But yeah, I'm not surprised with that Aidan McCarthy comparison, to be honest with you. If I had the hurling ability, I'd be glad I'd take his. I do. I have half the hurling ability as he has. Even like when they were struggling in the first half, he put over some great scores, even just to keep him in contention, and was pretty decent from his place balls as well. But yeah, Aina Kilnamona just weren't at it at all yesterday.
Yeah, very strange. Cratloe had a great win. Rian Considine, Podge Collins, Conor McGrath, Cathal McInerney, they were all very good in that 223 to 216 win over Newmarket and Fergus. Ballyea 221, Clooney Quinn 18 points, Tony Kelly with as little as 1-7 there, of course.
And he only scored 1-7.
Yeah, Tony, you're going to have to pick it up there as well. We've higher expectations for you. You might read out the other results.
I will indeed, yeah. So in the relegation playoff, Clare Castle will be happy this morning. The Magpies saved their bacon with a 28 points to 121 win over Whitegate. And as we mentioned earlier, Scariff had a big win over Smith O'Brien's, who were last year's intermediate champions. Mark Rogers with just the 4-12. And yeah, Keane Nolan, who we both see as a very bright prospect for Clare, he just wasn't able to handle Rogers. Rogers was on another planet yesterday, in fairness to him. And that leaves Whitegate and Smith O'Brien's in that relegation final. So last year's intermediate champions against Whitegate, who won it. They've won it a good few years back and have been operating at senior level and putting up competitive enough displays. Brendan Bugler was obviously manager with ourselves in Barr for the last 2 years, and I know he'd be keen to keep them up. But yeah, anything can happen in those kind of relegation games. We just go into the Derry Championship as well. It's 10 up for Slaugh Out. Did a big win over Kevin Lynch's. I think it was, what did we say? It was 8, 12 and 5 was the average winning margin when they met in the last 3 finals. It was 13 yesterday, 2-18 to 1-8. Kevin Lynch's were 6-5 up at half time, amazingly, when you look at the final score, with Sean Kelly and McKeever going well, but they were relying on wonder points, whereas Slaugh Out were dominating ball and leaving a lot of chances behind. Brendan Rogers, who we kind of said on Thursday's show, had a bit of a wrist injury, or he came on a half time. Yeah, broken wrist. We're not sure if it was broken or not, but he came on and didn't look too worse for wear anyway. He hit 1-1. They completely took over. Shane McGuigan, who obviously was brilliant with the Derry footballers this year, he moved out to midfield and gave a bit of a tour de force. I think he finished with 4 points. Cormac O'Doherty, he sat back as playmaker and was given lovely ball in. And they're, just... I always think with a football team playing hurling, when they're so well versed at the skills of hurling as well, the tackling is often what sets them apart. And by all accounts, Slaugh Out's tackling was brilliant yesterday. Got a couple of really big turnovers. Mihal McGrath is very good, and Christian McCaig, obviously. We're just reading now half of the Derry football team here. It's amazing, and they're able to do it at both codes. And they have a young player as well, Rory O'Meenon, who was very good. And Slaugh Out, as I said, 10 up. They'll be celebrating this morning. They'll meet the Down champions in the Ulster Senior Hurling Club Championship. And listen, they'll be favoured again to be in that last 4, as they have been for the last couple of years, and they'll take beating again, without a doubt.
Yeah, so the Dublin matches were on yesterday as well, the 2 quarterfinals. If you want to ask me about them, we knew Coola and Crokes were already through to the semi-finals, so it was just a case of seeing who would join them.
Yeah, you said about playing against Ballyboden and Lucan, 2 really dogged teams. Sound like a decent game. Finished Ballyboden 2-21, Lucan 23. What was the story of the game here? Did Colin Keeney start for Boden actually? And was this tight most of the way? There's only 4 in it at the end. Was it a tight game, and what was the winning and losing of it?
Yeah, it was for the most part. I mean, Lucan were nip and tuck for most of the first half. It was kind of late on that things turned, but it was just... I just felt that, as always, Lucan struggled to have enough scoring threats up the field. They put Chris Crummy up the field, and you can kind of understand why. The Dublin seniors themselves did have put him up in midfield. Sometimes they've had him up in centre forward, but he got a point. And I just kind of thought, as the game went on and high ball was going inside to Paul Crummy and it wasn't really sticking, to be fair, Luke Corcoran was spoiling him quite well. I just thought, right, maybe bring Paul Crummy out if it's not working, maybe get him into the play somewhere else, because he was working hard. And throw Chris Crummy in there. There's not too many as good as him in the air. So put him in full forward. It's hard to go from the backs to playing centre forward. You know that as well as anybody else. It's not an easy position to adjust to. So I just thought putting him full forward, that might have made a difference. The likes of John Bellew had a quiet first half. He roared into the second half. Colin Walsh hit 3 nice points for Lucan. And Chris O'Leary, the Valley Rovers native in Cork, he scored 12 points, 3 of those from play. So there were lads who did quite well for Lucan, but again, they just came up short in the scoring stakes. For Ballyboden, Paul Ryan, he hit 1-8. Now, I thought the penalty was a little bit soft. Maybe not everyone will agree with me on that one, but a player that really stood out for me for Boden was Luke McDwyer. So he's a young player, he's a slim player, he's not the biggest and most filled out. But by God, he can pull a ball out of the clouds and he can run straight down the centre. He set up both goal opportunities. So the first one was, there was a bit of a scramble when Lucan tried to work a short puck out. He flicked it back, and Niall McMorrow needed a couple of bites on the cherry before pulling the ball into the net. But McMorrow was brilliant in it full forward. And I wondered before the games, would Ballyboden put a couple of big men inside, or would they put a couple of small men inside? But they put Paul Ryan and Niall McMorrow in there. And McMorrow's finished with 1-3 from play. It was a great haul. And Paul Ryan got himself a few points from play. I think he got 5 from play. But what I found quite frustrating was, like, David O'Connor was very good when he was off from the spare man and the Ballyboden side of the park. He was playing the ball out well. He was getting onto ball and controlling it first time when it broke his way. At the other side, I just didn't feel that Lucan got enough value out of their spare man. But Johnny McCaffrey's had some great games over the years, but there was ball breaking down off Niall McMorrow at times. And, you know, he's not a big player, and you'd think he should be getting spoiled, nudged off, and then the sweeper comes in and picks up the ball. But generally, he'd break it, and he'd still end up getting the ball, whether there was 2 or 3 Lucan lads, and throw it over the bar or win a free. And I just thought that Lucan didn't use that extra man well, and that was a big reason that they also came up short. And just another positive I thought was Niall Ryan coming in off the bench. Timmy Hammersley was only brought on with 6 minutes to go, which I thought was a little bit strange, but I suppose the way they faded out against Coola, they just thought we need to have quality coming off the bench throughout to try and impact the game. And I suppose in a way it did work, so David Curtin will be delighted. Yeah,
definitely, without a doubt. Look at the other quarter final then. Nafina 119, Vincent 17 points. Nafina we kind of said it, they were in that dodgy spot between potentially being in down towards relegation. Now they've gotten 2 wins under their belt. Talk to me fitness-wise about availability of who did they have available to them at the weekend? Did they have most of maybe last year's county final winning team? And do you think they're incrementally improving from game to game?
Well, they're certainly improving from game to game, no doubt. I think they had only, when they played Coola several weeks ago, I think they had maybe only like 7 of last year's county final team. Now, Paul O'Dea, who's the Dublin panellist, he, as far as I know, broke his wrist against Coola that day, and that's why he went off. So, as things stand, he hasn't been playing. He didn't feature in this game. Who knows? If it's maybe not that bad a break, he could potentially face Coola in the semi-final. But they do have Colin Curry back, and he plays in the inside forward line. He was brilliant. And Sean Curry, who plays a bit more of a withdrawn role, but people might remember him scoring, was it 7 points from play in the county final last year. Now, Davy Crowe tied him down well in the second half for Crokes, but, you know, he's just such a good player. And the way he was roaming around and playing lovely ball up to his inside forwards, both AJ Murphy and Colin Curry, was really good for them. Like Donald Burke, he still did plenty in this game, but he was kind of a little bit hit and miss in the freeze. He scored 5 from play and he scored 4 from play and 4 placed balls. But you know, there's definitely more in him. But yeah, Colin Curry was excellent. The way he took his goal was really good. But an interesting feature, the feature that decided the game for me was that Liam Rush went full back on John Heatherton. So John Heatherton, people will probably know, has featured for Dublin in the last few years. Very, very big man. He'd scored a hat-trick against Crokes in the final group game. And a lot of that was high ball going in, very hard to deal with. And you looked at the Nafina defence, and I'm going through the match programme here, and you know, I can fully understand why you take Liam Rush out of his comfort zone at maybe centre back or full forward or something and say, needs must, we'll throw him full back on Heatherton. And to some degree, it was working in the sense that Heatherton wasn't able to catch ball and score a goal. Now, he got on plenty of ball, especially when dropped in front of him. And he scored 3 from play, had a few assists, scored a few frees. So like when the ball popped in front of him, a few times he'd shape and go another way. And, you know, Liam Rush is not a full back, and he was kind of sent for a hot dog once or twice. But I don't blame him too much, because you understand why management are doing it. And you understand that it's going to be give and take. Like Conor McHugh, the footballer, he was playing centre back, man marking Rian McBride. And again, there were times when, you know, Conor's a very good athlete, gets around, but at times he wasn't that comfortable on the ball and sort of maybe coughed up ball. So I was a little bit like, Jesus, maybe you need Liam Rush back out the field, because they were chasing the game at this stage. But what turned the game was, and I couldn't understand it at the time, and anyone who saw me doing co-commentary on it will see that I was straight away saying, why are you taking John Heatherton out of full forward and putting him into the half forward line? Okay. Because it had created this conundrum for Nafina where they were moving their centre and full back and putting them both into positions that maybe don't play to their strengths. He went out there, he was already on a yellow card, had a bad tackle, and ended up getting sent off. Now, I thought it was harsh, but why did you take him away from the area where he was doing damage? Because he was so good in there. And then Nafina took over for the rest of the game and deservedly won. And to be fair to Nafina, their bench had a big impact in this as well. Sean Ryan, who I mentioned earlier, the big ignorant joke, and Fergal Brannock as well.
I think there's a t-shirt in that. I honestly think there's a t-shirt in that. Big ignorant joke, not 14 on the back of it. 100%. There's an OurGame t-shirt in that. 100%.
Do people want it? If they want it, I can build it if you want it.
I tell you, I'd wear it anyway, and I know a lot of people that would as well. I think that's a great one, particularly for, you know, the way when a lot of lads get to their 30s, they're probably carrying a bit of timber. I think lads would love to wear that on a night out, to be honest with you. I'd wear it, and I'm not necessarily a big ignorant joke, but I'd wear it.
Yeah, well, look, as I said, we're going to have the old OurGame, our store actually being launched pretty soon. So if you want it, I'll build it. And actually, just a reminder, I might as well remind people we're brought to you by orgoretro.com. You might finish off the promotion there, please.
Yeah, if you want this lovely Offaly jersey that I have on, or the Cork jersey that Shane has on, or an array of those lovely jerseys there, go to orgoretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame to get 15% off. Just want to fly through a few comments, Shane, quickly, and we'll just finish up on Dublin then. Niall O'Connor, who knows a lot about all things Clare, just says there's no relegation final in Clare this year. Both Whitegate and Smith O'Brien's are now down, so both are gone down. And he just said it's the same next year. And he said they need to get back to a 16-team championship. And a couple other comments in here. Joe Butler, a chance still for Tommy Walsh to emulate his father by winning a senior county title. The father still has the bragging rights. It's amazing. As much as Tommy has won a county, that is true. And I know that from locally in Kilkenny, people would say the same. Richard Hogan says the village will play the Borough 3 times next weekend. Minor A on Saturday, Junior B on Sunday morning, and Senior semi-final on Sunday afternoon. That's mad. And a Celtic Tavern says this is going back to the maddest scores we've ever seen. A lad at school once at midfield, caught the ball at throw-in for second half, sold it upfield, put the ball over his own bar, forgot we'd changed sides for the second half. Everyone roaring to stop, but he kept going. John Corrigan from Barr, I mentioned this before, he did the exact same in a hurling match, won the throw-in and lofted it over the bar. Very funny, actually, one time, what he says there about everyone was shouting at him to stop. Remember, we played a game up in Kennedy against Shinrone. It was a minor hurling playoff, and I won a ball, I wouldn't say I burst out, but I got out anyway. And I got out anyway. And I started soloing anyway, and like solo for about 15 yards. Then all of a sudden I could feel like, you know when someone's behind you and when they're not behind you, and all of a sudden I was like, geez, am I moving that fast that no one's behind me? So I just stayed going. I ended up on the far 21, and like the whistle had been blown an R45, like, and I was just running like an absolute clown the whole length of the pitch. But anyone that knows me would know that I am a bit of a clown anyway. So it's par for the course. We'll fly through. There's loads of other hurling results. I'll just fly through the semi-final draw there actually in Dublin. It's Coola against Nafina and Bowden against Crokes. So 2 intriguing games there. Nafina probably coming good just when it matters against a Coola side. I think JJ Doyle and Saoirse Bulfin are both involved with Coola, as you well know. And Coola have been, consistently good all year. Bowden are coming well, as they always do at this time of the year, against the defending champions Croke. So that's going to be interesting there. And the relegation playoffs that we mentioned earlier, it was Oliver Plunkett's own Rua and Crave Kieran, 2-23 apiece, but Plunkett's won 6-5 on penalties, and Bridget's won the other one by a point, 117 to 116. In the Kildare hurling final, Naas continued their dominance. They're obviously reigning All-Ireland intermediate hurling champions. They beat Maynooth 20 points to 12. Not a bad showing from Maynooth, considering it was their first final in a long, long time, and they were only up from intermediate last year. Probably people would have been expecting maybe an even bigger win or a more comprehensive win for Naas. But they went point for point in the first 15 minutes, and then Naas kind of pulled clear. They went 14-7 ahead and never really looked back. I believe James Burke was very good on the dead balls. I think he had 10 points from place balls. Naas had hammered Maynooth in the group stages by the guts of about 30 points. So this was a decent showing from Maynooth, even if they probably did set up defensively enough, but you probably can't blame them if they've been beaten so comprehensively. I think Naas go into the Leinster Senior Championship this year, so it's going to be interesting to see how they fare there. Obviously have a lot of faces that we know well from Kildare, between James Burke, Brian Byrne, Simon Lacey, Rian Bourne, a lot of really, really good players there. And Naas actually were beaten in the Senior B final. Aero Corraquill beat them 3-16 to 111. I'll just fly through some results in Down as well.
Just before you do, Michael, I might just mention that we've got that coaching clinic coming up in Naas on the 21st of October. Shane Dowling, Dan Shanahan, and Richie Power are all going to be there, so that's going to be absolutely brilliant. We've a group offer going on that. It's 6 tickets for the price of 5. So I have the link shared on my Twitter there at Shane Saint. There's also one coming up in Father Manning Gales in Longford with Davy Burke, Oisin McConville, and Colin Lally. So that's going to be absolutely brilliant. That is on the morning of October the 15th. That's a Saturday morning. And you might as well plug this little thing.
Yeah, Jez, I was going to bring it up independently, but there's some star power in those 2 coaching clinics, and there's a fair bit of star power on show here. We're having a big reeling in the Hurling Years fundraiser in the County Arms Hotel in Barr. It's for a big fundraiser, the big fundraising campaign we're doing to get an astro pitch, a ball wall, and a gym, and in time a clubhouse in Brennan's Park. We have Anthony Daly, Eddie Brennan, Dan Shannon. We have local legends Brian Whelan and Johnny Pilkington. Darren Maloney's doing MC. I know, Shane, you'll be there. You'll be our roving reporter on the night. We have Barry Geraghty, the legendary jockey, there on the night as well. He's going to be a captain in the Question of Sport, a special edition of Question of Sport that I'm hosting halfway through the show. And we've loads more big guests to be announced over the coming days. Those tickets are on Eventbrite. If you go to my Twitter, you'll see it, and we'll put it up on the OurGame page after. But it's all action. It might be the inter-county off season, but I tell you something, it's all action.
It's busy season as far as I'm concerned. Never mind, it might be off season for people who only consider inter-county to be GAA, but for the rest of us, this is when it really comes to life. And sure, look, people know how much we love it, and the regular viewers of the show certainly do too. In Down, Portaferry.
Shane, I'll give you a rest there. I'll fly through these as well. And I have another county final to go through down the bottom of here.
Yeah.
So, Down, Portaferry, as we were saying, they beat Ballygal, get 3-13 to 9 points. Ballycran had a big win over Breed at 124-17. In the Roscommon Senior Hurling Championship, 4 Rhodes, one of the great names, a big fan of that, 116 to Atleagues, 13 points. And in Meath, it's going to be a Trim versus Rhode final. Trim had a 2-point victory over the reigning champions Kildalkey, 118 to 214, and Rhode had a 316 to 311 win over Kiltale. In Sligo, Cooler Strandhill beat Colliery St. Joseph's 215 to 17, and Navan had a huge win over Thurles Strand. It was 330 to 7 points. It was a county finals in Wicklow as well. Finished level between Bray Emmets and Glenealy, 16 points apiece. A bit of a battle of the free takers here. Gavin Weir ended up with 8 for Glenealy, 7 frees. Christy Morehouse hit 10, all from frees. Danny Staunton was very, very good for Glenealy. He had 5 points, 4 of which were from play. Bray looked like they were going to make it 4 in a row. They led by 3 with the final whistle approaching, but Glenealy battled back really well. 2 frees from Gavin Weir, and Jack Kavanagh fired over the leveller with the last puck of the game. So Bray's wait for 4 in a row will go on for another while. They did win the Intermediate Hurling Championship final, though. They beat Kilcool 315 to 10 points. And I just should have said there, their wait for 4 in a row, I've probably been inadvertently been a bit disparaging to Glenealy. It could be a wait for their 4 in a row dreams to go up in hope there, because Glenealy a really good side. Gavin Weir, Warren Kavanagh, Danny Staunton, loads of really, really good hurlers. And they'll fancy their chances after snatching a draw when it didn't look likely.
Yeah, I just want to play a clip of Martin Fogarty from our recent coaching clinic at UCD. Go and have a look at this, and we'll be back in a few minutes to chat a little bit more about the club stuff from the weekend.
Touch with what defending is about. Tyrone we were chatting earlier, he was talking about, and he was a fair man to catch. You know, he was talking about he's very quick to hit some up the player he was on, and he'd catch, but he was on fucking Dan Shanahan or someone like him. He might change his tact and block it down. So defenders defend. That's your first job. And, you know, if your 6 defenders are giving away 4 points each, I'd be giving them the curly finger. So, what I want to look on here is, I want to focus in on defenders. Very, very simple. I'm going to pair it right back to the start. And it's 2 of the essential skills. It's a rise and catch and poking and block. I'm going to talk a little bit about poking and block. And, you know, again, I put the question to any of you are working with teams maybe from minor up, and they're probably going to the gym. And I'm into a bit of gym work. I'm into everything. But you ask them a question, how many hours a week do they spend in the gym? They'll probably tell you 2 or 3. And ask them the same question, how many hours a week do they spend hooking and blocking? Or you as a coach, how many times have you this year worked on hooking and blocking? Because I don't know about the gym. I don't know how much improvement you're going to get in the gym. But I know for certain, if you work on hooking and blocking once a week, I guarantee you, your team will improve 4 points a match, minimum. I guarantee you. There's no doubt in the world about it. Okay, so that's where I'm coming from. Right, just to start, lads, will you just a yellow and an orange, just stand opposite each other, cross that line here, lads, and cross your hurls. Just go right across the line there. One here, one there. Right, a yellow here and an orange there. Okay, yellow. Here. Okay, just like that. Yellow here, orange there. Yellow here, orange there. Okay. Now, just pull up a little bit, give yourself space. Come up here, lads. Come up here. You push down a bit, guys. I want space. I want about a metre between each pair. Right. Hooking and blocking. It comes first of all to being able to use your hurl. And again, it's another bugbear of mine. That's a 36.5-inch hurl. That was a 34-inch hurl. There's so many hooks I'll miss. There's so many blocks I'll miss. Even there's so many rises the ball I'll miss. I can turn that 36 into a 26, just like that. But I've yet to see someone that can turn a 30 into a 36. Right? I mean, I'm serious. You know, Kieran was talking about earlier. Little short hurl I'm marking a big fella can only reach there. A longer hurl I can reach here. To me, there's every advantage in as you grow. Now, with a child needs a small hurl. Because if he hasn't a small hurl, that's what they're faced with, the yoke sticking in their way. So a child has to have it extra small, extra light. But as you grow, the bloody hurl should grow. That you don't have a 6'4" lad and you're using a little wooden spoon like this. You know, and the underground hurling is gone. He can't reach the flipping ground, not to mention the ball. Okay, right lads, just for 5 seconds, you could say we do this with under 10s, but also maybe do it with seniors. So, cross your hurl. Right, come up here. I just call this 0. Right? I want you just going like that yourselves. Right, not slashing like the tip boys, just barely tipping and tapping. Okay, keep going, mate. Tipping and tapping. Up. Call it. Full length hurl. Full length hurl. Ball is building, you're walking on the wrist, you're striking the wrist, and you're getting the flick. Okay. Right. You want a bit of footwork as well. Off you go. Okay, put the hurls right in the ground. Right on the ground, on the grass, and do the same. Off you go. Whoa, whoa. Right, the ground is down there. Say the lads already, they can't reach. Okay, right, this one now. I'm going attacking you for 3, and you're going backwards. You ready? High ones. I'm attacking you for 3 shots, and you're going back. You ready? Cross the hurls. Right, 1, 2, 3. Now you attack me. Come on. 1, 2, 3. Right, off you go. Come on. Come back. Come on. And forward again. Come on. Back. Right, low this time. Low. You ready? I'm attacking you. Come on. 1, 2, 3. Back. 2, 3. Let's go. Whoa. You're not slashing. You're just tipping and tapping. Okay? We're working on the wrist. Okay, now, guys are probably finding already what you find with young children. To hold the hurl short, to put the hands on it, because you're weak, little wrist is getting tired, and either the hurl is too heavy or the wrist is too weak. Okay, now, what I want this time is, lads, I want 3 high ones, followed by 3 low ones. So I'm attacking you. 1, go back, will you? 3, go back. 1, 2, 3, go. 1, 2, 3. Okay, off you go. Right, there. You go in there and give it like that again. Rush the lads here, lads. Ready? Off you go. And back. And hold it. Right, these 2. Go. And back. Right, do you notice any difference between the 2 pairs? No. Right, go together. Before you go. Go. Watch it. And back. Back. And you notice any difference? Oh, there's a savage difference. Right, and it's down to, who said it? Footwork. Yeah. The 7 essentials. Raising and catching, hooking and blocking, striking, hand passing, first touch. There's an extra one, which I call movement. Movement is everything, from jumping, twisting, turning, footwork. Now, again, we're talking about, ultimately we're leading into defending. If I'm attacking you, right? Look the way he's going. Like that, right? Because if you come running at me in slow motion, pretend you're going fast, right? I mean like this, look, run at me. If you walk over me, you'll knock me down easily. Watch this, turn around, turn around, turn around, turn around, turn around. Stand square like that. Watch this. I'm small and here's a big fella. Watch, look. I'm at the movement. Okay, go behind me. Do the same to me. Easy, no. Wait. Go on again. Go on again. See the difference? The difference with the feet. So if you're attacking like that, you're defending like that, you're in way more control. If you're running at me and you're thinking of taking a point and I'm getting out to you, and you change your mind and you decide to run past me and only an old bald-headed lad, go back up and do it. Go on. He's running at me, dummy, and run at me. I gotta get back like that and flick the ball. Now, watch the boys. Two lads were running. Okay, if you're running backwards, you'll fall over. Right, before you go again, just to see. And thanks for the example. I asked them to do it earlier on. Go ahead. Now, bit of a change there. Right? Good, good, good. Okay. So, we're looking at footwork. Shocking important. Are we okay on that? Right, that was 3 weeks work there in 5 minutes.
He's absolutely brilliant, isn't he?
Yeah, big fan of that now, because I think you need to mix the agriculture nature of hurling with the scientific, and I think he does that really well. I think you can never lose sight of the basics. Never ever lose sight of the basics in any sport. And a lot of times it's the simple things, and coaches will always say this, and managers, it's the simple things that will win championships. And in fairness, the Kilkenny boys always go back to the simple things. I love that Joe Butler said it there as well. I loved it as well. No slashing like the Tip boys. Any chance to get a cut in, always take it.
Yeah, and to be fair, that's a lot of what Martin did during that coaching clinic, as did Matty Kenny and Kieran Carey as well. It's all about practical stuff that you can bring out onto the pitch and show your own team. So that's what we'll be trying to do also in Naas with Shane Dowling, Dan Shanahan, Richie Power, and of course at the football one in Father Manning Gales in County Longford with Davy Burke, Colm Nally and Oisin McConville. So we try to put together as good a show as possible. And we do have that group deal where it's 6 for the price of 5.
Just on that, Shane, as well, the simple things and the practical things are the things that work. Like a big highfalutin, like cones and balls everywhere and 100 bibs and all this. Like that's it's not like realistic or practical. And the boys are great like that, and will, you know, impart loads of knowledge and loads of bits and pieces that will help your sessions be a lot more efficient and be a lot more ruthless, I'd say, as well, and go after certain skills. Yeah.
To talk about the Offaly football final yesterday, Rhode beat Tullamore 1-9-11. What a goal by Rory McNamee. Brilliantly finished.
Outrageous, yeah. I was chatting to the Rhode manager, Declan Gorman, after, and he just said the first thing he thought of when the goal went in, that it was, he didn't know if it was fate or not, but nearly exactly 40 years to the day after, like a high lob and dropping ball went in for Seamus Darby's goal, a clubmate obviously of Rory McNamee, another high lob and dropping ball went in, and Johnny Maloney, who was brilliant for Tullamore, was under the high ball and kind of had it in his hands, and whatever way there was a tiny bit of contact when he came down, the ball just slipped up. Rory caught it and rounded the keeper and put it into the net brilliantly. But that was a game-changing score. Rhode hit 1-2 without reply at that stage. Just to go through the story of the game, like, there's no point in saying any different. The first half was hard to watch. It was hard to watch. Tullamore went until the 19th minute before they scored, and it was a cornerback that scored, Nigel Bracken, and that was a general team. Nigel Bracken came up for a point from cornerback. Declan Hogan came up for a point for fullback. Johnny Maloney came up for 2 points from centre back. Like, they completely outscored what was a malfunctioning Tullamore forward division. Rhode played against a decent breeze in the first half, set up quite defensively. We're trying to contain Tullamore. Did a really, really good job. But Rhode only took 4 shots on goal in the first half, and 3 of them were from frees. So they only took 1 shot from play. And that went wide, actually. They ended up 5-3 down at half time. And I think a lot of people, even in the press box, were thinking, or maybe Rhode look a bit gassed here, look a bit out of options. But they contained Tullamore when they had that breeze at their backs. And they opened up a good bit in the second half, played an awful lot more open. Like Anton Sullivan had their first point from play within seconds of the start. And that 1-2 burst when they were 8-6 down, and they went 1-8 to 8 up. And it looked like they were going to kick on and they were in control. In fairness to Tullamore, kicked the next 3 scores. Harry Plunkett kicked 2 frees. And Johnny Maloney surged forward to kick another point. but leave it to Niall McNamee, who came up with the winner in the 59th minute. It was an attacking mark, which I'm not a fan of at all, and I don't like a county final being decided on an attacking mark. We'll come to that in a second.
I prefer penalties over an attacking mark deciding.
But from a Rhode point of view, this was probably one against the grain. A lot of the talk locally was of who Rhode are missing. They were missing Niall Darby, who's one of their best defenders. Owen Rigney, another one of their best defenders. Two real good, solid county players. They were both missing with cruciate injuries, and they had an aging team, and they were still able to dig down deep into the reserves, real deep into the locker, and all their big men produced big games. Anton Sullivan, who's an injury doubt coming in, was brilliant. That man on the screen there, Alan McNamee, winning his 13th Offaly Senior Football Championship. So Will O'Callaghan had a good tweet last night. It was Rhode 31 Offaly Senior Football titles, Tullamore 28 Offaly Senior Football titles. Alan McNamee is third on the Roll of Honour by himself, with 13 senior football championship titles, which is absolutely amazing, really. It's incredible. He was 40 in February, still controlling Offaly club football. Just to go through a few stats from Alan. Alan made his debut, won his first county title when he was 16 in 1998, and is still going strong. He's won county titles in 4 separate decades. He delivered the ball in for Rory McNamee's goal. And you can talk about age and whatever, and maybe like the legs slow down, but the head doesn't slow down. He caught the kick out from Corey White, looked up, saw it was a one-on-one inside. Rory McNamee had the hand up, put a high ball in. That's just like, that's game smarts, that's experience, knowing that there's something on here that is not going to be on at any other stage in the game. He put a lovely ball in, a tempting ball in, ended up in a goal, and like, he was superb throughout at 40 years young. He was absolutely brilliant. Just read out a couple of quotes from him. Alan's quite a funny fella, humorous kind of fella, and he was like, I'd know him from playing football up and down or whatever, and he no interest in talking about him having 13 titles, and he just said that Rhode have 31, and that's all he was worried about. But I asked him what's the secret to success, and he just kind of smirked at me, and he just said it's about minding the body, get the porridge in the morning and the 2 litres of water every day. I tell you, somehow now I'd say there's a bit more to the secret to success than a bit of porridge in the morning and getting the 2 litres, and I'd say somehow he's drinking more than 2 litres of water a day. But and this was a common theme across Offaly finals at the weekend. Never underestimate the power of the media to provide motivation. So and Alan gave these words independently. We didn't have to put words in his mouth. So I just asked him, how sweet is this one? And he just said, it's probably one of the sweetest ones of all time. I suppose we were written off after last year. I remember we were reading in the paper last year, the people saying it was like a changing of the guard in Offaly football. And there is no doubt that was a huge driving force for us. And never underestimate that. Never underestimate. I don't think it's good long-term motivation, but I think to get you over the line on a given day, something like that, stuff like that hurts. It's just like if someone says you're X, Y, or Z, there's something innately in you that you want to prove them wrong. And and that's just it. It won't provide long-term motivation, but it might just give you that extra % to make a run maybe that you wouldn't have before or something like that. So, and we're just talking about journalists giving motivation. Kevin Egan, who's based in Roscommon these days, Ballycommon took a bit of a swipe at him yesterday in the aftermath of their intermediate football win. So Kevin had done the rankings for the Offaly Independent, which is a local free paper in Offaly. He'd done the rankings of all the football teams within Offaly, and he'd ranked Ballycommon 22, which would mean that they weren't really in the reckoning for intermediate honours. And they posted the intermediate trophy with the piece from the Offaly Independent where Ballycommon are number 22, and obviously blew it up and had it in the dressing room. So again, never underestimate the power of the media, particularly locally. People just don't forget when you say something about them, and they take it very, very personally. Kevin was giving an honest opinion, and I think he found good humor in it. And sure, listen, it's promoting his work as well, so it can't be a bad thing. But locally, things you say, I'm sure, Shane, about Tip would really strike a chord with people from Tip, and it'd be the same with me in Offaly. That's just the nature of it. People take them a lot more to heart, shall we say.
Yeah, and to be honest, like, we'd be here talking honestly about lots of different clubs, and only one of them can end up winning it. So several of them might use what we say occasionally, not to think we're great fellas that people care what we say, but like, we have heard it back about stuff we've said, but only one can win. So does that mean we were right about everyone else that we apparently wrote off? But to be fair to Kevin very much saw the funny side in this with Ballycommon, and he goes, definitely trending upwards, as they say on social media. Congrats to outstanding result, and hopefully there's a few more chapters to your story in 2022. And Paul Fitzpatrick, I should say, at the Anglo Cell said the media wrote us off, and Kevin goes, to be fair, actually typing it out and preserving it for use the following years, going the extra mile. I'm kind of impressed. So, yeah, that was a bit of good fun more than anything else there.
Yeah, just an interesting one on the 4 major Offaly adult football titles. So, Rhode won the senior, Bracknell won the senior B, Ballycommon won the intermediate, and Balnagar won the junior. So, the 4 major adult titles all went to villages, which is mad when you think about it. When you think of big populated places like Tullamore, obviously they were going for 2 in a row, Eden, Derry, Clare. Barr is not, would say, a football stronghold, but we did win our Junior B quarter final last weekend. So we're in a semi final. We're playing Clare in that, and I believe Clare have a bit of a stacked team. So that should be an interesting one. Just back to this attacking mark, Shane. I remember Tomás O'Shea saying there'd be holy war if an All Ireland final was decided on attacking mark. The Offaly senior football final was decided on attacking mark. Not too many people talking about it, but it amazes me that a rule, I don't know, I haven't heard anybody give me a really good reason why this rule should be in place, and yet it's still going to be in place by all accounts for the 2023 championship. It really, really baffles me, because I just do not see what it offers the GA. I think it offers absolutely nothing.
Absolutely agree. The only reason I'd keep it in is if the ball had to be delivered from outside the 45 and had to go inside the 21. That's the only way I keep it, because you're guaranteed it's going to be a decent amount of skill involved in terms of the pass or the ball going in, and it'll only be the odd time that it's an uncontested, little handy one. It has to go. It just absolutely has to go. It's terrible. It adds nothing. It's not skillful. It's almost like letting the air out of the balloon type thing. No, absolutely hate it. And it's only when an All-Ireland final or a Munster final, Ulster final, whatever is decided by it, that it'll cause the uproar. I mean, it's ruined an Offaly final, or certainly the finale of the final, but it won't be until it ruins a bigger game that it's going to get changed.
And just Andrew says here, the attacking mark is there, stick tight to your man. But it's a really difficult one, because there's the potential to overcommit yourself there as well, to try and stop a mark. Like,
someone can take a mark 40 yards out from a ball like that was hit crossfield from like 48 yards out. It can go crossfield to like 35 yards out, as long as it travels 25 yards. You can't sit back and cover absolutely everywhere. Now, maybe you could say it should draw teams out or whatever, but it doesn't really do that either. Look, I'm sure everyone has their opinion. Keep the comments coming in, but for me, it has to go.
No, I'd be the same as well, yeah. Just on Rhode, that's Rhode's 31st title, so they extended their lead at the head of the Offaly Roll of Honour. Tullamore are back on 28. A really disappointing performance from Tullamore. No point in saying any different. Outside of probably Johnny Maloney and Luke Egan at stages, Tullamore really underperformed here. And I said their forward line really malfunctioned and misfired. And, it stretches back to, I think it's 1924, 25 and 26 since Tullamore last did a back-to-back. And for a club with 28 county titles, that'll be really, really disappointing for them. And they are the up-and-coming team. I was chatting to someone about this last night. Potentially, this may be a good thing for them. A lot of the young fellas involved maybe have won county titles quite convincingly at minor and under 20 level, and maybe they need to know that is a difference at senior level. But Niall Stack has done a really, really good job with them. I'm sure he'll still be there again next year. And listen, they're going to be hard to beat in Offaly for the next 7 or 8 years at least, but they will see this as one that got away. Just a comment in from Adelaide, actually. Hey guys, Zach Toohey won AFL Premiership over the weekend, in case you didn't know. We definitely did know, on his 250th appearance for the Geelong Cats. This was an absolute massacre absolute massacre. The Swans were never in it at all. And obviously, there must be Portlaoise blood in you, because you never mentioned the Kerry man who won the AFL as well. So Mark O'Connor, and it had only been Ty Kennelly up until last Saturday, and now Zach Toohey and Mark O'Connor have joined him as well. I brought
Mark O'Connor's going to be back for Dingle soon, isn't he? The talk is he's going to feature for them, and they're going well.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe Zach, if he's not carrying a knock, might be home on holidays and might or no, he won't be featuring. We'll get into that. If they got in the replay, maybe, and we go to that goal chance, I'm sure later. I'm sure he would have loved to play for them. Just even to see what Portlaoise means to Toohey, bringing up the green and white flag and everything when he's getting his medal. There was no Ty Kennelly-esque jig or anything like that for either of them, but I'm sure they were absolutely loving it. And I mentioned about Mark O'Connor in Thursday's show. I wonder if, because of the fact that, you know, he's achieved one of the ultimates of going out to Australia is to win a premiership medal. I wonder, does that increase the likelihood of him not coming home for Kerry next year or anything like that, but the likelihood of him coming back maybe a bit sooner if he was going to come back at all?
Yeah, so the semi-finals in Westmeath, St. Lomans beat Kilkenny. They're going for an 8th successive final, first team since that loan in 53-60. And the Downs beat Tyrrell Pass 310-113, so that was a bit tighter.
Yeah. Lomans, in fairness, are the standard bearers in Westmeath, and they were probably chasing the game at different stages at the start, but they came with a really, really strong surge. And as I said, yeah, they're the first team since that loan team in the 50s and going into the 60s to get to 8 finals in a row, and they'll be hard beaten again. When you have John Heston up top, and they've plenty more as well, plenty more former Westmeath stars and a couple of current guys as well.
And former Longford player Peter Foy is with them as well.
That's right, yeah. And they were beaten. They would still look back at regret with that Leinster final that they lost to Moorfield a couple of years ago. And I'm sure they'd love to get a crack again. I think they're on the opposite. Westmeath champions are on the opposite side of the draw to Dublin. I think it's like Longford, Westmeath, Offaly, and Meath. I think on one side of the Leinster draw. So there's an opening there for the county champions there potentially to go all the way to a Leinster final. And as someone said to me last night, and then take a pasting from Kilmacud Crokes in the Leinster final. Now that's not the point, but there is a chance potentially for a couple of teams, Rhode included, maybe to go on a bit of a run to a Leinster final. They'll play the Downs in that final. They're obviously local rivals. They overcame Tyrrell's Pass 310-113 despite Charlie Drom, who's on the Westmeath squad, been sent off 3 minutes into the second half. They still had way too much for Tyrrell's Pass. Luke Laughlin, who was obviously very good for Westmeath this year in their Tailteann Cup win, he scored 5 points. And former county hurler Niall Mitchell, he's not former county hurler, he's still a county hurler, Niall Mitchell, who's obviously doubling up between Clonkill and the Downs. He hurls with Clonkill. He had Lar Wall's side to a 310-113 victory. And the Downs, I think, had lost 4 semi-finals in recent years before that, so they'll be delighted to get through to the county final there. An intriguing enough pair in there. You'd have Lomans favourites on paper, but now that the Downs have the monkey off the back, I think, there'd be a little less pressure maybe going into the final.
Yeah, just one of the 2 Donegal football semi-finals was played at the weekend. Naomh Connell beat Guido 13 points to 1-8, so that's a 6th successive final for them. And that was their 9th successive semi-final, and they lost Leo McClune in the warm-up. He'd had an injury, scored a goal the previous day out of course against Glenswilly, and John O'Malley also couldn't play because of a sickness. Of course, the other semi-final had to be called off. There was a bereavement in Donegal, very tough time for the Verney family. Really, really terrible stuff there. And all we can do is extend our sympathies to their family because just so terrible.
Yeah, There's words don't do justice to the pain and suffering that the Verney family are going through at the moment. So yeah, deepest sympathies to everybody up around Donegal. A really, really tough time, particularly to Brendan and his family. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And the Antrim semi-finals were on over the weekend. Cregan were dethroned by Cargan. So that was quite the result there. And I think I might have a little clip here. Yeah, it's the winning point by Thomas McCann in extra time. I'll just bring it up here and we can have a quick little look at it. 1 second now. I'll put her up in full screen for you. So this is a lovely little score for Cargan to win the game. Do you hear how nuts the crowd are going? That's great stuff.
Yeah, looked like for all the world he was going to shoot off his right and sold a lovely little step inside. It's amazing when you're watching a game like that. Like, it doesn't happen the same in hurling. You see the chain of passes and a shot, like it's usually a small window for the shot. And if you don't take it and you try and recycle, you don't know when that window will open up again. But lovely little sidestep back inside, yeah. And obviously dethroned the reigning champions there. I don't know if you read out the other one there. It was St. Mary's, Ahagallen 310, Roger Casement's Port Glenone 18 points. And then in the Down Championship, the reigning All-Ireland champions survived an almighty scare. So Kilcoo and Kilclonduff drew 11 points to 1-8. That was after extra time. So they shared, what did they share? 20 scores across 80 minutes. Now, I wouldn't think it was an epic. But
would you be on for a replay of that?
Yeah, well, listen, no, they needed to get that played off, in fairness. But anybody would have got their value for money in I think it went down to sudden death penalties. And again, the Kilcoo haven't been going particularly well. They were beaten well in the league final, weren't they? And have struggled their way through so far. But this might give them a bit of a kick. And yeah, it's going to be fascinating because they've such a long journey. They look like they're struggling a bit already, and there's such a long journey to go back if they want to get anywhere near where they were last February in Croke Park. But they survived at least anyway. And just some of the other results there and down. Mayo Bridgeby carried off 9 points to 7, and Longstone had a 2-8 to 7 points win over Unreact. And then we go through the semi-finals in Laois. So it's going to be O'Dempsey's against the reigning champions, Portarlington. I think Portarlington are going for 3 in a row in Laois. And O'Dempsey's had a 116 to 11 points win over Courtwood. And the Battle of the Ports, Portarlington came through 9 points to 8 against Portlaoise. So Portarlington were the hottest of favourites going into this. I think they beat them 4-9 to 6 points in last year's county final. Portlaoise definitely decided that wasn't going to happen. They played quite defensively after being opened up in last year's county final. And you might bring up the incredible save from Scott Osborne in the 3rd minute of additional time to win this one.
Do I have it? I don't know where it is.
Well, you might find it, Shane, because this is like such a good reaction save if the goal had went in, Portlaoise are through, Portarlington are gone, and probably crying in their soup for the rest of the winter. Just an unbelievable save. And what I loved even as much as the save was the defender absolutely like going out, the defender basically carrying the ball out, when if he'd given the ball away or put the ball out over the sideline, it was a line ball that Portlaoise had to draw the game. So I just loved this passage of play.
Here, knock my hand off the ground. Oh, did he kick it off the ground? I don't. Here's Aidan McGovern. There's his goal. Chance for Aidan McGovern. Goal! Oh, what a save! Oh my God, what a save! What a save! You win.
You cut it off before the defender went. You cut it off before the defender went running out. The defender rides a couple of tackles and then actually pops the ball over one of the forwards and lets it bounce and gets taken out of it and wins a free. But it was just an incredible.
Okay, I'm not going to let you down here. We're going to go again. We're going to go again. We're not going to go through the whole thing, but we'll go again because you seem to be fairly hard up about this one. So he's bringing the ball out.
Oh, you will not see a better save in this championship this year. Conor Bennett comes away with. I don't even know who he saved from. Who cares? They put out. They still have a still going. They won a free. Sure, that's it.
Conor Bennett came out with
the instinct, Shane, would have been, just kick the ball away or whatever. But there was still probably a chance of a play. If he put out over the sideline, there was probably a chance of kicking a draw and score. So that was like, after a brilliant save, that was just coolness personified by the defender there. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And Portarlington are still en route. Like Portarlington were good in Leinster last year. And they'll fancy their chances of making a mark. Again, I think they're on the wrong side of the draw, shall we say. But they still fancy their chances of making a mark in Leinster if they can get out of Laois and win that final against O'Dempsey's.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, they just ran out of juice a little bit in that Leinster clash that they had last year. But there was fairly impartial commentary there, a roar of picked up the ball at one stage. And then for me, right, that was a routine enough save. The ball was right beside him. Ball was right beside him.
Well, listen.
If it goes in, it's a clanger.
I don't know. I don't think it's a clanger if it goes in because your man was he must have only been about 6 yards
for
away.
Me.
For me, there's very few. I tell you something. If you go back through, there's very few of those volleyball style spikes that are actually stopped because it's hard to know exactly where they're going. Well, I think it was a good reaction save. I really enjoyed the defender after. I enjoyed that element even more for me.
Yeah, he was chopped for me. Armagh, you might read them out.
I will, of course. Yeah, the Armagh quarterfinals. Glenmore had a 1-9 to 8 points win over Mullaghbawn. This just brilliant games here. Like the 3 of them went to extra time. 4 points in that game. Mahary beat Ballymacnab 15-14 after extra time. You might just check the score of the Crossmaglen game, Shane. I don't know if that's right. Clonagale 16 points. Killeavy 2-9 after extra time as well. And it says here Crossmaglen Rangers 1-15. Drummond Nave Park, St. Patrick's Drummond T 1-5. If Crossmaglen managed to win by 10 points after extra time, I'd be absolutely amazed.
They actually did. They did.
So that's amazing. That's Nave Park obviously only scored 1-5. So they got 6 scores in 80 minutes of football.
Yeah, I'm trying to see what the score was at full time. But geez, at half time though, it was 1-1 to 2 points. So it sounded like an absolute horror show.
No, hold on now a second now. Last week you had a go at me. Saying, sure, they're entitled to do whatever they want. A horror show. Like teams are saying, yeah, you had a bee in your bonnet last week over me saying there was negative football. And I didn't forget it.
1 second now. They're entitled to do what they want, but we're entitled to not be overly impressed either.
Yeah, but you were impressed enough last week. You were actually standing by them last week. But
look, I don't have the energy for you today.
Andrew Sullivan says there, when Shea Given shares it, you know it's a good save. Listen, it was a very, very good reaction save. It's the nature of the timing of it as well. The timing of it is unreal. But that's mad that Crossmaglen won 1-15 to 1-5 after extra time. Said it wasn't epic, but they're true. And I believe, just reading in our own paper this morning, that Jamie Clark will be back available for their semi-final, I think. So, like, listen, having a player of that calibre coming back at club level will be an unbelievable boost. No point in saying any different.
Yeah. 13th consecutive semi-final.
Serious going, in fairness. And actually, just an interesting one, and we might put it out on Twitter later. Alan McNamee's 13 county titles. Like outside of Crossmaglen, maybe. I know Paul Hirty has something like 19.
19, isn't it?
Yeah, like he equaled Damien Martin, who's obviously a goalkeeper, and goalkeepers naturally have a longer, longevity, should we say, than outfield players. But I wonder where Alan McNamee's 13 Offaly senior football medals ranks up against other counties. How many lads or lassies have won, like outside of Ballynacorty or Ballynacarby, I should say, Ballymacarby, how many people have won that many county titles outfield, and especially across 4 decades? That's maybe something we can chat a bit more about on Thursday's show. But I'll fly through a few more results. Carlow semi-finals is going to be Palatine against Tinryland. How do we pronounce that again? Tinryland, yeah. In the Carlow final, Palatine had a narrow win over Atvilly. It was 13 points to 2-6. And I believe Paul Broderick came off the bench for Tinryland and kicked 1-3 as they beat Mount Leinster Rangers 2-5 to 6 points. There was 2 Cavan quarter-final replays. Gowna beat Cavan Gales pretty convincingly, finished 2-14 to 9. And Rammer United had a convincing enough win over Mullaghorn as well, 1-10 to 6. Relegation playoff final. Ballina had an 8 points to 6 win over Butler's Bridge. In Fermanagh, wins for draw between Timor Shamrocks and Ballinalek. Wins for Derry, Gonley, Rosslea and Kinawley in Galway. That was round 5. Not much at stake here because most of the big hitters have already booked their way through. Corofin and Tuam Stars finished 16 points apiece. Mount Bellew and Mylaw had a big win over St. James's, 123 to 19. Milltown and Clare Galway finished level, 12 apiece. St. Michael's had a 11 points to 9 win over Monavea Abbey. Killanann had a 2-14 to 9 points win over Carlastrand. On Spadale won what is a low-scoring epic 2-8 to 3-4 against Uachtarard. And Mike Cullen and Lettermore drew 1-11 to 2-8. And John O'Malley, Salthill, Knocknacarra had a big win over Ancaru Rua. You might fly through Kerry briefly, Shane.
Actually, before I do, and we're speaking about Kerry, Jerry O'Sullivan, who works for Kerry today on Radio Kerry, he said, looks like the GAA will be investigating another abandoned underage game in Kerry this week following an under-15s match that saw a mentor of one of the teams ending up needing treatment in University Hospital Kerry. A game had about 10 minutes to go when the altercation happened. Players involved reports of the mentor being kicked while on the ground. Parents of one of the club refused to continue the game. This follows on from an abandoned under-11 hurling match earlier this month. So, look, things have gone absolutely out of control. And as I said, GoPro is one suggestion for the referee that might help things in some way, shape or form. But, like, people have to get a hold of themselves when they go to these matches and just think how they act.
I think we're going to have to make decisions where it's not a matter of people having to get a hold of themselves, that they're just not allowed within a certain area, or, you know, completely, like, and just sometimes you just have to go with big hefty bans. If people break, like, if people break the rules once, they know, you know, they're hit with some sort of big hefty ban. People are totally put off even thinking about doing anything like that again, just because it has gone out of control. ML89 just had a comment in. Kieran Fitzgerald from Corofin has something crazy at county and Connacht level, and the 4 All-Irelands. He surely does. A load of Connachts and a load of All-Irelands in there. We'll check that another time. But Kieran Fitzgerald was the same as McNamee, went all the way through from teenage years into like late 30s, winning county titles the whole way through. I'm going to save your voice, Shane. I'm going to go through Kerry myself here. Kenmare Shamrocks and Dr. Crokes drew 17 points to 114. Again, a lot of the knockout stages were kind of known here already. Spa Killarney 4-13, Cairns O'Reilly 16. So that's 3 defeats from 3 games for Cairns O'Reilly's. They were out of it even before that final group game. Nagale had a 4-15 to 3-9 win over West Kerry. Shannon Rangers 4-10, St. Kieran's 1-14. East Kerry, who definitely looked like the red hot favourites, had a 2-13 to 1-11 win over Dingle. Mid Kerry beat Austin Sachs 1-15 to 1-7. Field Rangers 1-14. Temple Noah 10 points. That's the first time Temple Noah, I'd say, have been beaten between the club championship and the county championship in, I think it could be this year. South Kerry 16 points. St. Brendan 16. In Kildare, Clane booked their first county final, senior football county final place. I think it's 19 years. They beat a tie 1-12 to 1-8. So they're going to face last year's Leinster finalist Naas in the final. That's in 2 weeks' time, I think. I believe Tom Cribben is involved with Clane and has them very well set up defensively. So it's going to be fascinating to see how that final goes. Naas were able to get over the line last year after a couple of near misses and semi-final misses. So interesting to see if they can stay going there. Shane, you have lots of information about the Longford Championship. That's going to be, the final is going to be a meeting of neighbours Mullinachta, St. Columba's and Columkill for the first time since 1952.
Yeah, it could be a tasty one. Mullinachta beat Dramard 15 points to 1-9. So Mullinachta were down 1-2 to a point early on, but still came out on top. 4-time champions in recent years, played like champions after that early stages and never panicked. And the dominance they had in the middle third from the McGivneys, John Keegan, Michael Cunningham and Conor Leonard, that got them going. It was never really certain until the final whistle, as Mullinachta shooting kept Dramard within a kick of the ball. And Frankie McGee, in his usual outstanding form from Dramard. Goal line clearance from Dave McGivney a few minutes from the end proved vital as the half-parish men found their way to 6 finals since 2014. Columkills were rampant against the Slashers, 113 to 5 points. Colin McCabe was excellent for the Auna Cliff men without starman Barry McKeown. Disappointing Townside never fully got going and only got a single point in the second half. So it's pretty interesting final between the neighbouring parishes for the first time in 70 years. That's going to happen in 2 months' time. And the champions are out in Louth.
Yeah, you had said as well that John Keegan was a doubt coming in, so he obviously played through the pain barrier there in Longford to play that game. And yeah, like Mullinachta are such a seasoned outfit as well. James McGivney, David McGivney, like they have an awful lot of experience, and they obviously have Keane Mackey from Cavan as well, who was involved when they won the county title last year too. So plenty of experience, and I'm sure they're on that side of the draw too. That looks like a softer side of the draw. So there's opportunities if county titles can be won in whoever's going to win them in Meath and Longford in particular. There's definitely opportunities there for them. I'll fly through the Louth Senior Football Championship. As you said, the reigning champions are out. RD St. Mary's had a 1-point win over Nave Martine, 11 points to 10, and they will face a Newtown Blues side who were really, really impressive winners over Geraldines. They won 113 to 1-2. 1-2 is a shocking, disappointing return from a team in any game, let alone in a county semi-final. So it's going to be Newtown Blues against RD St. Mary's in the Loud final. It was round 3 in Mayo as well. Lee Keegan's Westport had a good win over Mayo Gales, 13 points to 10. Ballintubber had a really impressive win over the Nail, 316 to 1-6. Briefly beat Belmullet by 2. Clare Morris beat Balla by 3. Charlestown beat the Davits by 8. Castlebar and Gary Moore drew 12 points apiece. Ballina Stephen Knights had a good win over Armore, 414 to 2-8. And Knockmore have got back on track. They had a 111 to 10 points win over Balladreen. While in the Tyrone Championship, I'll just come to Tyrone at the end actually. Monaghan as well had plenty of drama too. Scottstown came through against Latin on penalties as well, so they survived also. And this in the quarterfinals, they won 4-3 on penalties. The quarterfinals winners were Ballybay, Scottstown. They're the two They're the two quarterfinal winners, and they'll go through to the semi-finalists with the two group winners already through to the semi-finals. And relegation round 2 in Monaghan, Dunamine 112, Castleblenny Fogs 13, and Carrick Cross had a 15-point to 11 win over Anamullen. The last one we talked about, we teed it up earlier, Tyrone Senior Football Championship. Dunamore had a 16 points to 12 win over Greencastle. Dromore beat Killyclar 3-9 to 110. Oma 14 points, Ardbow 9. Ergil Kieran, powered by Dara Canavan, had a 115 to 110 win over Moy, obviously powered by Colin and Sean Kavanagh. This looked like a belter of a game here. Clonoe and Moortown finished Clonoe 23 points, Moortown 214 after extra time. And Loch McCrory 9 points, Derry Lawn 7. So Derry Lawn, Moortown, Moy, Ardbow, Killyclar, Greencastle, all out of the Tyrone Championship at this early stage. Have we it all said?
I'm not capable of saying anymore. Except that my goal of the week is Mark Rogers of Scariff and Alan McNamee of Rhode, just for what he's done.
Yeah, I'd probably give it to I'd probably give it Shane O'Donnell for 1-9 for Éire Óg, even though he was maybe not marking anybody. And I give it Alan McNamee was outstanding, but Anton Sullivan carried a knock into the game and was man of the match. I thought he was absolutely brilliant, particularly given that he was injured. Some amount of results and different things dealt with in today's show, Shane. I'll sign off here because I know your voice is not great, but if you want this Galway jersey or that lovely New York jersey that Shane has there, go to argoretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame to get 15% off. And I give one little plug for my own fundraiser before I go. Reeling in the hurling years, €20 a ticket down the County Arms in Barr on Thursday, October the 13th. Loads more big names to be announced. Anthony Daly, Eddie Brennan, Dan Shannon, including loads of local legends as well. I think we have it all said, Shane. Thanks a million for joining us again today, folks. Really, really appreciate it. And we'll see you again on Thursday for Thursday's preview show.